I'm talking. Yeah. What do I think about universalism? Just like the acceptance of everything.
Like the acceptance of all of their different worldviews as like on equal par with your own.
I have mass respect for it because that's what I view. Um, I'm not going to say anyone else is wrong. I'm not going to say anyone else is more correct than I am. I'm going to say everyone has the right to. I shouldn't say that. Um, no one is 100%, 100. I should, yeah, 100% convinced. I shouldn't say convinced. Uh, no one knows the absolute truth.
Okay.
I'll put it like that. Or at least I haven't seen it.
Okay.
So yeah.
I was I'm not like I'm not saying that I don't respect you for that, but I will say that I like my I definitely do think that well, I'm just going to say it. What I believe is correct and where people differ with me they're wrong,
Okay.
but not because like I don't not because I'm trying to be like doctrinal or anything. Of course, like opinion, like I like vanilla ice cream better than others.
Right.
That's not what I mean.
No, no, dude, I understand completely.
But it's my worldview because
Right.
that I think that it's true.
Uh,
And
I,
so
I, yeah. Again, again, what you believe to be true. Um, again, I have mass respect for the Roman Catholic Church for this reason, because they put a lot of effort into what they do. It's not just like Protestantism, in which they just throw things together and say, "Here it is," believe this. They don't give much philosophical background as to why you should believe it.
Depends on
mhm.
the Protestant.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, of
Okay.
course.
Yes. It's just for. Would you say the majority of Protestants do that though?
Majority of modern Protestantism.
Okay.
Yes. Most of the reformers, I think, did a much better job of giving a good, reasonable philosophical background for what they were teaching.
Yeah. So if I may, I can also answer your question from my perspective.
Okay.
Because your question, to reiterate, your question is
It
what
was
do
to
I think of?
everyone.
Pardon?
It was to everyone.
Okay. So your question was, what do I think of universalism? That's a kind of a complex sort of question to ask, really, when you get down to it. Um, do I think that everything is equally true and equally valid? No. There are some things that I think are absolutely wrong. Um, do I think that they have existence, that there are truths in those things? Yes. I sort of have taken the perspective of a sort of ontological polyvalency, that there are different truths that are evident in the world. They're equally true from a different, almost dimension. Like there's a dimension of the same kind of reality. So ultimately, there is a reality in which my religion exists, and there's a reality in which another person's religion exists. There is a Valhalla for my heathen friends. There is a Christian heaven for those of my friends who are Christian, and Elysium for me. I do well. Um, but that being said, I practice a tradition that is pre-Christian, that is more concurrent with historical forms of polytheism that were ultimately orthopraxic, where the influence and the emphasis was on correct actions and correct rituals contingent upon one's culture and were ultimately enforced or even just lightly encouraged, depending on the culture, by your cultural kind of upbringing. But ultimately, the idea of an absolute truth, and especially in Greek religion, was considered absolute, pure, and absolute hubris. To suggest that there is an absolute knowable truth is the greatest form of ignorance. That being
Okay.
said, I pretty much am cool with the vast majority of religions, but when being honest, I have a real problem with Abrahamism in general.
Okay.
Jewish people is a rare exception to that rule because they're not going out trying to convert everyone, and they have
Right.
massive amounts of people within the last 2,000 years.
And again, that's why I do have a very strong respect for Judaism. And I don't mean to sound like I'm against, because we have one in this chat, or not in this. Well, he is in this chat, and though he is a Sufi, I do have a little bit of a problem with Islam, in which it does say in there it has a mass and a in which it does encourage child marriage, which.
Oh yeah, if you read a lot of the I'm not I one of my best one of my best childhood friends is Muslim, and so is his entire family. I have no problem against Muslims, but I do have a problem with a lot of the things that the Quran and the Hadiths teach.
Yeah. Again, yeah, the same reason. Let's be honest. I mean, you don't have to hate the person for what they believe. That's not, yeah. But you can disagree with what they believe in. And in Islam, the idea that women are to submit to their husbands, not, and it is existence in other Abrahamic religions, but I mean, it's like they can't walk outside of, like, without
Hijab.
Yeah, without a man. Yep, that's, again, it's awesome in the Bible too.
Is that the one where it says, "I do not permit a woman to teach or have authority over a man"?
Yeah.
The Timothy verse. It just says Timothy 2:11. Is it 2 Timothy or 1st? I think it's 1st. Yeah. The problem I have with people using that verse, "Let women learn silence with all submissiveness. I permit no woman to teach or have authority over men. She is to keep silent." The thing I have a problem with people using that verse, because if you read the rest of chapter 2, it's talking about how people are supposed to be behaving in church, and Timothy was I guess you could call him like sort of a pastor of a specific church, which at the time of Paul, there was a kind of like a feminist cult which elevated women above men. And so Paul was teaching Timothy on like sort of how to deal with this.
I mean, to answer even the aspect of killing a non-believer, I disagree with it, and of course I disagree with violence at any level for the sake of spreading your belief. But here's the thing. I mean, an adult, when you say it to an adult can fight back. An adult, can rationalize, can say, would possibly even be able to sit down with this individual and debate.
Yeah.
With a child does not know better. A 6-year-old girl probably doesn't even understand the concept of marriage. Outside of, you are going to live your life with this man for the rest of your life. And I mean, child marriage, yes, it's odd. Child marriage being odd is a new concept. Yes, it is. I understand that. But if we think about it in the terms of it's modern day society, we know that a child's brain is not fully developed. We know. Yeah, well, that's fine.
What age does a child stop being a child? Because I'm not American, I don't live in America, but I know there are certain states where what I would consider children are legally able to get married. So, but I know they would interpret the age of a child? I'm not trying to be I'm not trying to be conflictive. I was just kind of curious of how somebody would define when a child is a child and when they're an adult.
In the U.S., technically everywhere, technically, you are still a child until you're 18.
You, legally, you're a child.
Yeah. I think whenever you are no longer a child, when you reach puberty, in terms of you become a quote unquote teenager, or you become, you're no longer, you're able to be rational with your own thoughts. You understand the consequences of what you do, and you will, yeah. Well, again, before that, children were just small adults, but now, with modern technology and modern being able to observe the neuro makeup of a child and an adult, we can see that a child's brain is still developing at a very young age. It develops, and it's very, very easy to be influenced as compared to and someone of an older age. I don't know when it stops being maybe puberty. I'm not. I don't think so. I don't think so, because again, science and the genetic makeup isn't in the genetic makeup of every human being. That's my 2 cents.
Sorry.
Don't worry about it.
I was just curious. Will, what's your particular orientation as far as spirituality or philosophy?
Myself?
I'm a Roman Catholic.
Fair enough. Just curious.
I'm actually surprised at how easy this is going, because most people in sort of interfaith circles, they don't like Catholics.
I get it, but because a lot of people, Catholics are from kind of the default for a lot of people to hate on.
Yeah. I mean, I know why. It's just
yeah.
It's just refreshing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, our prefrontal cortex, is not developed until 25 years old. Yeah.
I think for the most part develops by most of the deal by the time you're 17, or 21 maybe, if I'm not mistaken. But it's not like 100% done until 25.
Which is one of the reasons why I quit drinking. Because I drink very little now anymore.
I may drink, but I'm first off, I'm way too young to drink at this point. But
there's a cultural concept that you see frequently in older times, not even all that long ago. And even if you were an adult legally, if you were 18, 19, 20 years old, 21 even, they would still call you a boy. Because in a lot of cases it was like not just because of your physical youth and your appearance, but also what you had done. I mean, if you were a young man, never married, no kids, no strong, stable job, you haven't busted your ass all day, then how could I consider you a man? And the same going obviously for women being called girls into their 20s.
Right.
Sometimes to their discredit, unfortunately.
Because I mean, there's a lot. I would personally say a lot of women, maybe not the majority. I don't know. Maybe it's a majority. Do develop faster or mature faster mentally than a lot of men.
I can testify to that being in high school.
I believe it.
Although, that being said, girls are also kind of crazy sometimes.
Well, again, yeah. I think they have every right to. I mean, because guys do a lot of stuff that it's we don't even realize the stupid things we do.
My friend, one of my friends, he rode on the front of the car while it was driving.
Yeah, that's pretty dumb.
He was like holding on to it, and I'm like, you're gonna end up killing yourself one of these days.
Huh? Yeah. I mean, again, I think guys are naturally
Stupid.
we're naturally inclined to be stupid.
There's no nice way of putting it. We aren't.
I think it's testosterone that encourages us to take risks, and while those things taking risks can be good.
Not those sorts of risks.
Yeah. So, Path, what country do you live in?
Canada.
Called it. I knew your accent was, yeah. A little bit.
Yeah, like Kevin said, I'm a Gaonist Jew. I'm like a very traditional Jew.
Okay.
For the past 5 years.
Okay. Did you wait? And then this is just a question. Did you convert, or were you always?
No, I didn't convert, but I was born in a secular household.
Oh, okay.
My spiritual path beforehand for like maybe about like 10 years was Buddhism.
Oh, okay. So what made you take up Judaism? Because I'm just going to say my observance is I've known a lot of Jews convert from Judaism to Buddhism. What made you do the opposite?
Well, like to begin with, my family is secular, like
Okay.
like almost like they're pretty much socialist humanists. So like not just secular, but like adamantly secular. So it wasn't like I was brought up in Judaism at all. So,
Okay.
but I was a Theravada Buddhist for a long time.
Okay.
To the point where I was going to go to Nepal and Sri Lanka to go to a monastery when I was 20, but that never happened, for obvious, clearly. But are you asking in particular what like brought me to
Yeah.
what brought me to Judaism per se, or what brought me out of Buddhism?
Either or, both. I don't know.
Because they're a little bit separate questions. Because there's like a kind of a buffer zone between the two.
Really? Well, I'd like to hear both.
So I guess like from the beginning, what brought me out of Buddhism was this is going to sound weird, especially because I know not a lot of people, but I know a few people here are polytheists, and I don't want them to interpret this in a polytheistic manner. But what brought me out of Buddhism was a lack of objective truth. And when I say that, I don't mean absolute truth, like how polytheists have an issue with that. I don't mean that because I don't believe in absolute truth either, necessarily. But it's the idea of the fact that one's life is not let's say like one's personal beliefs and actions don't necessarily affect the world around them, which is a very fundamental teaching, at least of Theravada Buddhism, maybe not Maharana, but I don't know, because I was never in that school of thought. So the idea of it's a very self-centered practice, and that's the whole point. The whole point is to reach personal nirvana and destruction of ego, right? So there's no concept of the outer world associated with that, and I had an issue with that. It kind of grew when I got older, kind of got worse and worse, and I couldn't get any really direct answers. But that necessarily didn't remove me from it. It removed me more from the philosophy of that being the ultimate goal of the destruction of ego. I felt was the or the destruction of self was a I had a fundamental issue with, where the highest point was a selfish school, not a non-selfish school. But so that led me through a few avenues, because I grew up with around me maybe like 4 different faith groups from a lot of friends, a lot of Jews obviously, but none of them were necessarily Orthodox or religious. A lot of Muslims, mainly Shia from Iran. A lot of, not a lot, and then like a few Zoroastrians from Iran, and my closest friends were all grew up in the Kemetic faith, the ancient Egyptian practices. So I looked into those, and they didn't really get into it. But what I ended up doing is, through my journey, I think this happens with a lot of people too. I was just browsing through a bookstore, and I never practiced Judaism growing up. Like, maybe the odd kind of thing, but not in a religious context.
You might have celebrated Hanukkah once or twice.
Right, and going to the Kanis, like the synagogue, was like not even every year kind of idea. Like my parents weren't in the least bit oriented in that aspect. Right. Not even traditionally. They're very adamantly. But so I was browsing through a bookstore, and I wasn't even in the religious section because I didn't really care about religion. Even as a Buddhist, I didn't care about religion because I thought it was antithetical to my practice and what my teachers also taught. Didn't really teach religion, but or theology, which is, I think, a lot of people have issue with, because a lot of people don't understand the differences between the two schools of thoughts of Buddhism, how they're diametrically opposed. So like if somebody thinks of Buddhism, they think of maybe like Tibetan Buddhism, which is like furthest, almost complete opposite on so many scales from what I was raised and trained in. Like, right. Not even comparable in a lot of ways. But so I was looking through the philosophy section, and there was a book called the 8 Chapters, and it was written by an author called Maimonides, and I read it, and it made sense to me. And there's a lot of personal things that, if somebody wants to ask me why it made sense to me, I could answer the question that, not in the live thing, but it made sense to me, and I applied the principles to my life, and my life got drastically better from what it was at the point. And once I got into it a little bit more, I realized that Maimonides was a non-Jewish name for Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, and I looked into my own tradition and started to apply the Torah to my life, and my life has significantly got better over the course of time. So mainly I came to practice Judaism through theological differences from what I grew up with, and through practical applications that bettered my life. So that's why I practice extremely, extremely traditional Judaism.
That's really cool. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. But I'm, like most Jews, I'm not dogmatic, so.
Okay. Okay.
And that's why I really appreciate when Kevin says, when he mentions Abrahamic religions, he separates us from Islam and Christianity, because the way we view dogma, truth, and even people who aren't part of our faith is very diametrically opposed. And I think those are the most important things when it comes to an interfaith forum. So, no offense, Will. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Oh, it's going to take a lot more than that to offend me.
Yeah, I didn't mean to say that you were doing anything wrong. I'm just saying, like, I don't like to be grouped in other Abrahamic religions, and I don't like the concept of Judeo-Christian truth.
Trust me, I understand that. I understand it completely.
The last thing I want to do is offend anybody.
Would you say that there are such things as dogmatic Jews, which do believe in absolute truth?
Yep, 100%. Mainly mystical schools coming out of Europe.
I've heard. That was actually on Reddit. I was reading something about that.
Yeah, it definitely exists, but it's I wouldn't even say not necessarily a minority, but it's because we're as a group we're a minority to begin with, but our faith has no large-scale schools of thoughts. We're all just groups of minorities.
Like you don't
Unlike,
have any, in Catholicism, you don't. It's not like in Catholicism where you have Gregorians and Augustinians and
well,
Thomists and.
I would even say like this, like how in Islam you have like 4 schools of thought. You have Sunni Shia, you have Ibadi, and you have maybe Sufi or Ahmadiyya maybe. And in Christianity you have Eastern and Oriental Orthodox. You have Protestants. You have Catholicism. You don't have that in Judaism. We have a plethora of different schools of thoughts, but we really break it down to a level of observance.
Okay.
That's
kind of cool.
Theological schools. You could say like quote unquote Orthodox, and maybe Reuben will understand why I have an issue with the term. I don't identify as Orthodox, but the outside world would. But that's based off of historical, political reasons. But we have like Orthodox, which means somebody who's like fully observant to their faith. And then from that you have like different tiers of how much you observe the religion versus like what's your theological school of thought. So that doesn't really exist because once you get into like the actual faith, and I'm going to be bigoted and say like those who actually observe the religion 100%, and that governs their life, and the philosophy governs their life. Once you get into that group, it's made up of like so many different sects and schools of thoughts that there's no majority.
Okay.
So it's a little bit different in that sense.
So
but
I do have a question in terms of what do you think of Christians who call themselves Judeo-Christians? Like, why? I never understood that. Like, because
like Jews for Jesus, or like messianic kind of idea.
No, I'm like Christians who
like,
Christians.
You mean
like
like when people say the Judeo-Christian God?
Yeah.
I have an extremely it's just me. I'm not going to speak for
right. Okay.
Yeah, but I have a really big issue with that because I think that the Christian God and the Jewish God is diametrically opposed to each other. But,
would you want to emphasize on that? Because that's something I've thought for a while.
Because I could be wrong, but from my own personal studies and I should emphasize that all my friends or acquaintances and people I've talked to that I grew up with that were Christian were all Orthodox. So I don't really know about Catholics or Protestants.
Okay.
But, or they're also Copts too. But
we believe very, very similar things.
Right, exactly. I know that. So it's like with I'll put that in the same group. That's what I'm saying. Like my view of Christianity is, my God doesn't care about salvation. My God doesn't care about redemption. My God doesn't care about the concept of absolute truth. My God. There's a lot of aspects. I can put it this way. There's a lot of aspect of Christian theology that's diametrically opposed to mine. Not just talking about the concept of God, like the idea of the theology of what God is, but more so the idea of the theology of Christianity that's so different from mine that I couldn't say it's remotely the same, such as mainly relating to sin, redemption, and salvation.
Okay.
What about the Trinity?
What about the Trinity?
Well, would you say that is like something in Christian theology that is dynamically opposed to the Jewish God?
Yeah, I would say that, yeah.
That was pretty much an expectation, but I did meet one Jew who thought it could be a possibility based on some certain verses in the Old Testament.
Yeah, there's definitely those schools of thoughts, and mainly coming out of European mysticism, and a book that I don't use this word lightly, and I rarely ever use it, but a heretical book, but that a lot of European Jews use. So sorry, it's just I don't want to say the wrong thing and offend anybody. Or
you're not going to offend anyone, dude.
But,
you're fine. You're fine.
Yeah, sorry. Let's put it this way. There's a saying: 2 Jews, 3 opinions. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay. God is
But
God is a four-letter word. I know. Okay, never mind.
there's definitely schools of thoughts of Judaism that I would say are heretical, and that doesn't mean that it's because I disagree with them, but I think there's plenty of schools of thoughts of Judaism that I disagree with, but I wouldn't call them heretics, even though I would never practice their form of Judaism. But there are some that are definitely, I would say, are outside the fold of something you could argue. And what you have to come back to is the Tanakh, the Bible, and then realistically back to the Torah. So if you can't defend your beliefs from the Torah, then...
Right. Right.
And sorry for using the H word. I really don't think it's appropriate to use, but in the question, yeah.
I just think that heretical is an emotionally loaded word, but it's really not as bad as what people think of it.
I think it's also emotionally loaded, but I don't know a better word to say. Like the idea of their theology is outside of what they're claiming their theology represents.
Right.
So, like, for them to say that this is a Jewish belief or a Christian belief or whatever, and claim it, like, kind of like, I'm not going to use another faith group because that's just offensive, but to say that like, I am this, and I believe this, and this is what I believe, and my belief represents this, even though everybody else around me in that same group would say that's wrong, even though all those other groups are diametrically opposed to each other, and everybody can agree that this concept is wrong, is that the case. And when it comes to Judaism, and I think when it comes to other religions, the idea of compromising on monotheism is like kind of like what it boils down to. Okay. And I know a lot of people here don't like monotheism, but I'll try to be a good...
Honestly, I have no problem. I've learned more about Judaism tonight than I ever have in my entire life. I think this is really cool. So honestly, I think I found a newfound respect for it. I had respected for it before, but this is really cool.
I can probably tell you a lot about monotheism. I may not be able to tell you everything about Judaism. Well, I guess I don't want to say this, but more modern versions of Judaism. I haven't really looked at most of those. Most of what I know about Judaism is from what I've read from, well, the Old Testament.
Yeah. And again, I don't really concern myself with any of it. So again, me being a hermeticist, I'm no. And then yeah.
I think for the question, outside the concept of God, I think the biggest opposition between Judaism and Christianity would have to be the idea of original sin.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of Orthodox don't believe in original sin to begin with, so I don't know if that's necessarily a Christian argument, but I think, at least for me personally, outside of the concept of how we view God, which is a biggie, obviously, but about theology, it'd have to be about like original sin or sin in general, how sin operates.
The other thing I wanted to ask Kevin, I've never asked this before, and it just came to mind. Do you speak Greek? Or
no. I'm in the process of learning more of the language, but I have difficulty learning spoken language. I'm pretty good with written.
It's
going to be a process.
I'm barely learning how to read it.
You learning Koine?
No, I'm learning Attic.
Why?
Because I want to know. I want to be able to read things like the works of Aristotle and other classical writers.
Okay. But most of the Christian teachings that you would actually want to read in Greek are in Koine.
Well, yes, but Koine, if you know Attic Greek, learning Koine Greek is much easier.
So you're starting from the foundation. Okay.
Yes.
Well, be aware there are some eccentricities to Attic Greek that are not present in Koine.
Yes, such as the optative mood.
Yeah. And various types of pronunciations and spellings.
Right.
I've seen actually the difference between some of those.
There's actually a Teach Yourself Greek program from the Teach Yourself program. It's audio and it's a workbook. It's actually pretty decent.
I can actually show you my Greek textbook if you want.
Do it.
Let me see if I can find my. Here's my webcam. Now you guys all get to see my ugly mug as well.
Identities are being revealed.
I actually have to leave the Hangout for a second in order for this to work.
Okay.
See you in a bit. I expected it to. Oh. So I did want to speak on one thing, though, and this is personal to Hermeticism. Recently, there's been a I don't want to say it's not recently. Between Hermeticists, a division has been taking place.
Well, there's a lot of those. So.
Oh yeah. But between the mystics and the magicians.
Oh, this fucking grindstone.
All right.
No, it's good, but damn, it's annoying. That is a grindstone that keeps going on with Greek-focused paths. The difference between theurgia and magia.
Yeah. No, like we can't interact with one another.
It's a blend of both.
Yeah, but the thing is,
make it unique.
Now everyone's saying like, oh well, you know, you have to abide by this philosophy exclusively, or else you know you're not part of our secret special club.
Yeah, that's just ego. That has very little to do with ontology or the actual tradition itself. For that matter, a lot of the Hermetic traditions in Western esotericism don't really resemble early Hermeticism in the first place. There are things that were in Hermetic traditions that are no longer present in modern occult traditions. So to split hairs over something that they basically don't practice is kind of stupid.
No, the reason they're getting...
This is my Greek textbook.
Sweet.
Very nice.
What's funny is that my Latin teacher actually gave this to me.
That's cool. So how long have you been studying Greek?
Actually about a year.
Nice. You kept up with it.
Mm-hmm.
I tried Hebrew for a year and gave up.
I've actually always had a really big interest in ancient languages. Latin is definitely my favorite language. I don't know why. I've even started to read it just without translating, and I've almost completely learned how to do it. I think I've learned most of the rules. I just need to get more fluent with it. But I think there's just sort of like how everyone seems to think like French is the language of love. It's just like Latin sort of has that kind of feeling with me.
Yeah, it's a romantic language in that not that it's focused on love as much as it's focused on the whole of experience, drama. It's where we get a lot of the concepts of a very deep, intense kind of emotional content in Western world, largely through Greek and Roman cultures. You really see this in the tragedies. Our word tragedy doesn't mean anything of what it meant in the ancient world. In the ancient world, a tragedy was a play for freaking everything. Every aspect of human emotion was explored in the Greek tragedy.
Yeah.
My favorite Greek tragedy is the Iliad.
Kevin, would like a tragedy mean an extreme expression of emotion then, regardless of the emotion, or just in general?
It's in general. I mean, it's indicative of it. It's not what it actually means.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So it's, I guess, what can it be essentially compared to, like making a scene, like in the modern English language?
A tragedy is epic. I mean, to use our modern vernacular for that word that's used so commonly in slang, it kind of means that. A tragedy is not just a simple play. It's a play with an epic quality to it. There's a sense of grandeur. There's a sense of intensity and depth and yes, to a certain extent, the sort of dichotomies of the world, life and death, love and war, and all these sorts of things are epitomized in the Greek tragedy. So our concepts that we have of like modern fantasy and sci-fi actually are closer to a Greek tragedy than a lot of the things we would call drama nowadays.
Yeah, I found that interesting. A lot of the words that we like hear and then sort of interpret in from our world. A good example is the word telos, or yeah, it's telos. Like when I first saw that that meant like an end or power, I'm like, really? I thought like teleology meant like something's purpose, and it's sort of interesting if you just see like the connection that that had in philosophy down throughout the ages, starting with I think either Plato or Aristotle. Aristotle, I definitely know, used telos a lot.
Okay, telos is a very, very complicated fucking word. Its most basic definition that you can relegate is one of accomplishment, like from teleo, which is I accomplish. It can refer to completion, the accomplishment or fulfillment of something, but it can also represent the result or the product of such action. It can represent the end or the end of life. It can represent boundaries. It can represent power or government offices, tasks or duties, even money. But ultimately, it represents accomplishment, and that has largely to do with how the Greeks saw themselves. You see this in particular in their concepts of virtue. Look through the Delphic maxims, the kinds of things that they valued, and the earlier translations that they used for that. I'm sure you're familiar with arete, excellence, which is the penultimate virtue of the Greeks. And that very much ties into that sort of orthopraxy that I was talking about before with their religious beliefs. They were focused entirely on what you did, on the rituals that you performed, contingent upon your culture. You were to be Greek. They were intensely self-reliant and intensely self-focused in that. That's why they had so many of the conflicts they had, because how do you be self-focused and be virtuous at the same time without going off the deep end? That's where that intensity that you see in Rome comes from, because they modeled themselves after the Greeks.
I know exactly how you can do it. Just repeal the law of non-contradiction.
Yeah, right.
We got what's up?
Okay, my computer lags way too much when I have this on.
That's fine. You can do that. You can shut it off, or you can also do an adjust bandwidth usage. But yeah, you don't have to be on.
Salam alaikum, Frank.
Wa alaikum salam.
Hey Frank, what headphones do you use? Like, what are your brand?
Oh, Sony.
That's right, I asked you that. I'm so sorry. Oh,
He has the same headphones that I do.
really?
I had this actually for like this is 5 years. I had
Really?
this headphone. Yeah, this is the longest lasting headphone I ever got.
You see, I got like these. Using my Turtle Beach. I don't even game, and I bought Turtle Beach because I'm that big of a loser.
I don't even know what my headphones are.
It looked like Audio Techno when I first saw it. Then I was like, I don't know.
You mean Audio Technic?
Yeah, Technic.
No, they're very comfortable. So
Mine hurt my ears after like hours of being on a Hangout.
And just for anyone who would be interested, this is Liber 777, Crowley's work. And again, I'm as a person, Crowley to me, or Crowley, however you want to say it, wasn't really all that important. He was a lot in Hermeticism, but more so in Thelema. I have a lot of respect for the man, but if you just be interested in stuff like that.
Book 777 or the.
It's an occult text, so it's going to have a lot of very particular and often very cryptic sorts of examinations and descriptions of things. You have to take it with a grain of salt and realize that a lot of the things that he wrote were intentionally that way.
Yeah.
Largely because of British law when it had to do with what you could write in a book.
Based on the title, I thought it was going to be in Latin, which got me all excited.
No, unfortunately. But again, Hermeticism does have aspects of Christianity in it, so...
A lot of things have aspects of Christianity in them.
Oh, yeah.
It's more accurate to say that Hermeticism has elements of things that developed in the Hellenistic period concurrently with Christianity, Gnosticism, Persian Gnosticism.
Yes.
It was a stewing pot of different kinds of mystery traditions.
Mm-hmm.
It's a yes. Okay. Kevin's right as always.
I don't know about that.
No, you are. Don't be modest.
I could prove him wrong.
Go ahead.
Oh, I don't know what I could prove him wrong on. I'm just pretty sure I could prove him wrong on something.
Maybe something, but guy knows his stuff.
I have to.
Oh yeah.
There's not much left of my tradition, so I have to study.
That's so depressing, Kevin. Can we not say things that make me feel depressed?
Kevin, I was watching a documentary on your tradition, but in Greece. It wasn't the one I posted to your wall, but it was a different one.
Okay.
And from the people, like when I watched the video, I kind of got this idea of it, but when I really read the comments of people who proclaim that they practice it, I really kind of it really kind of reinforced my ideas about how a lot of the Greek, or at least the European practitioners, have kind of like a very, lack of a better term, bigoted view.
There's some absolute fucking crazies on YouTube.
Right now, I know for sure that like
spirit science.
A lot of I know for sure a lot of Nordic religions have been co-opted by the right-wing neo-Nazis. Mm-hmm. I was wondering if that like also comes to territory with Greece, like further south, and other traditional religions in that area.
It does, but it's less prevalent. Because to make the connection to a very particular form of anthroposophic like Nazism is difficult, because it spent most of its time focusing on Germanic mysticism, tying that to these sort of mythical Aryans who really never existed.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Don't you watch Spirit Science, Kevin?
No, that's another type of crazy. I don't have enough crystals for that level of crazy.
Hey, Kevin, I know how you feel with the feeling like you have to study and know your stuff. I feel like Christianity, and especially Catholicism, has been under very heavy assaults for the past 200 years, so to say.
Really?
So I feel like...
Tell me more.
For instance, well, if we were just to talk about the Catholic Church, Protestant evangelists have been, protesting as much as they can, and doing things like creating conspiracy theories about people like the Jesuits and other aspects of the Vatican. Christianity in general has been under severe intellectual attack in the philosophical fields. Actually,
angry.
Religion in general has been
Sure. Sure.
Most philosophers today are actually atheist. Well, outside of philosophy, but most I don't want to like lump all philosophers together because
No,
that's
you're
just
not.
a bad
You're
idea.
you're talking about what's going on. Pretty
Hmm.
much, philosophy is the religion of atheists right now. They'll never say it. They'll never admit it. But that's basically what it is for them.
Hmm.
They worship logic in the way that they conceive of it.
Yeah.
It's
I
not
mean,
necessarily a bad thing. I mean,
I think it's bad to use logic as an idol, but I don't
oh
think
yeah,
that logic itself is a
yeah.
bad thing.
No, it's not.
I think that um, I think that logic can be used to prove the existence of, well, God.
Well,
And
see, the reason why atheists exist is because of your religion. Because you insist on an absolute truth. They become incredibly angry and become very radical. They leave that, but they don't leave behind that idea. So they believe in an absolute truth in which God doesn't exist. And they fight with you. And they will continue to fight with you, probably for several more centuries.
okay. And but the thing is that I don't think that that has any bearing on absolute truth, other than people don't like it.
Sure. But, you know, as a perfect way to solve that, don't
Don't.
force it on other people.
Yep.
You do
Yeah.
that, they'll go away. They'll go play
I
their
I
video
find that
games and worship their philosophy in private.
I find that hard to believe.
Of course,
Um,
because that's what your religion teaches you. Your religion teaches you that it's the good word, that it has to be
no, no, no,
spread.
no, that's not what I meant. I meant that they'll just go away because
If they have nothing to fight, then what are they going to argue about?
they're going to say that I believe in fairy tales.
Oh
You
yeah,
see, that's
Kevin, I was going to say, you're saying if like an atheist has nothing to fight, is that like a an atheist will create something to fight? Not all
Good point.
atheists, but I mean
Like-
like
No, that's a valid point.
an antitheist
Like, have you
will
ever-
create a demon. They'll like even if they don't believe in it.
I remember just watching a video about like a popular hymn that was going around at one point, and of course there were 50,000 atheists in the comments who were making fun of the song, saying how Christians believed in fairy tales.
Well,
Like
Well.
people didn't even try to fight.
they're children.
I know.
They're children. 35 and 40-year-old grown adults who are children. If you relegate them to children and ignore them, then it goes away.
Oh no, I don't deal with those guys anymore.
You
I'm
don't
worried.
take the bait. If you don't take the bait, they have nothing. If you tell them that I have a belief and I have experiences that you don't have and there's no way to disprove it, then they have nothing. But if you try to approach your beliefs as a claim, as soon as you relegate your beliefs to a claim, they have to attack you. They have to fight you. They have to debate you. It is what they're born for.
Okay.
Right.
But I prefer having a belief which is defensible on the ground of whether or not it can be tested as true or false, rather than just on personal experience.
And that's wonderful if you want to engage in that. But everyone else, save for very Orthodox Muslims and very Orthodox Christians, and probably many people even within both those camps that are progressive, pretty much everything else doesn't care. The only two religious groups that really care about that, that want to have a defensible absolute truth, is Islam and Christianity.
Okay. Okay. Like,
And that's why you are open targets for atheists, because they cannot handle that. They are absolutists just like you.
but if that's the price that I have to pay for truth, it's a small price to pay.
Then don't complain about it.
Oh no! I think you misunderstood. I wasn't complaining about
You're saying that Christians are under attack, and they're the main
Yeah.
people trying to attack Christianity right now as atheists. Nobody else really gives a
Yes,
shit.
I wasn't complaining. I was saying that I feel as though I need to know what I am talking about, so that way when people receive these attackers and they go looking for answers, there will be someone who will be able to answer.
To prey on their vulnerability.
What?
To prey on their vulnerability. They were just attacked by atheists, and then you want to prove your religion to them because they have been attacked. Shouldn't they try to find the truth for themselves?
Hang on.
Shouldn't they have a defensible perspective for themselves?
Okay, so say like another Roman Catholic comes to me and asks, "Well, what's the answer to X, Y, and Z?" Like I don't, like how do I know that Catholicism is true? And are you saying that I should just say, "Oh, you just have to figure that out by yourself"?
No, you give them the resources from which they would find out the answers to those doctrines.
Okay, well that's essentially what I do. I feel like I need to know what I'm talking about. I need to like be able to. I feel like I need to know what the Catholic Church teaches about X, Y, and Z before I can tell people or give people even resources about what the Catholic Church teaches about X, Y, and Z.
Okay.
Okay.
I
Respect that. Respect that.
from a personal point of view, 2 weeks ago, I was walking in a mall, and people can obviously, like, I have a beard, I have a peyote, and I have a kippa, and I also wear a tzitzit, which are like the strings that hang out. And an atheist came up to me, and literally the first words he said to me is like, "You know, the world is older than 6,000 years, and there was no global flood." And all I said was like, "Yeah, I agree with you." And then he just walked away because, like, I don't know. That's how, like, so many. It was like a real life atheist troll, and like right in my face. Like that's the only words he said to me. He came up to me and said,
To an atheist.
That's like exactly like I was like okay, I agree with you. I don't believe that.
Okay.
So what's your point?
Evolution is something that I really don't care
Here's
about.
the thing. Here's the thing you have to understand about.
It's frustrating because that's how they view the world. They view the world in absolutes, but they defend themselves saying there is no absolutes. So
The modern day atheist community, all right, is what we call, and you probably all have heard this, fedora atheists.
Yeah,
all right?
pretty much.
The fedora tippers. And the thing is, they are the kind of guys who believe women should be with them because they're the nice guys. They believe that they're they're somehow superior to everyone else because they're atheists. Yeah, basement dwellers, basically. And it's, they're scared of getting outside. They're scared of, saying, maybe women don't deserve, maybe I don't deserve the attention of women simply because, I'm, a guy and view myself as more intelligent than everyone else.
I've actually made the point that atheism in its militant forms, not just some person who just doesn't believe in anything, but the kinds that go out and debate, the Vittora tippers that go on Reddit or various Facebook groups or chat rooms or whatever, that they're a sort of fascist in that they think that atheism and atheists or non-believers are effectively genetically superior because they don't have this sort of anachronistic holdover of belief that it's this unevolved element. What's really ironic about it is the vast majority of atheists I've interacted with over the years are evidence of evolution failing, or rather just this example of evolution having some pretty dark areas. They are the last people who would survive in a survival situation. And yet they constantly go on about how, evolution is, this wonderful thing or whatever. And it's not going to save you. You're still a lonely loser dwelling in your basement, yelling at random strangers on Reddit.
I've actually, it's comedic, and I have this one story I'm going to tell, and then I'll shut up. But I was coming out back a while ago. I went to church with the family, and I'm coming out of the church, and we're literally right down the street from our local shopping mall. So we walk down the street, of course, And I'm still in a good outfit. I have my suit on and everything. We're walking down, and got my hands in my pockets, just walking down. And we get to this shopping mall. I go inside, and I go back to the comic book store. All right. And I hear this. Look, it's the Christians. And I'm like, I turn to these guys. I'm like, what? It's like, and this guy, this severely obese guy, with a fedora and a My Little Pony shirt comes out and tries to make fun of me. And I'm like, first of all, I thought this was like a joke. I was like, what's going on? He's like, so you believe in God? I was like, well, yeah, a lot of people believe in God. You know, a lot of people do. He's like, yeah, well, God's not real. Okay, well, okay. And he follows us around for like 3 minutes straight, trying, like, screaming at us that God's not real. Like, not making an argument for it, just screaming at us. Literally screaming again and again and again.
Proof by assertion works every
Yeah,
time.
and it's like, why? Like, what are you trying to prove? Like, all you have proved is that atheists can be far more annoying than everyone else.
All that you've proved is that this representative of atheism is a complete asshole.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
like, if you want to
they're-
represent... And I'm not saying, like, every atheist is a bad person. But I am saying...
Oh
that,
no, I know plenty of them who are nice
I know
people.
plenty of atheists who are moral people, who are good people. But the thing is, they need to really, really work on this militant atheist point of view, because there's a lot, and I mean a lot of them out there.
I actually have a reason for why they exist. Really, honestly.
Okay.
There are two types of atheists, and it comes down to a sort of ontological aspect for them. They are either nihilists or existentialists, really. The existentialists are the ones that sort of make their own destiny. They believe there's nothing controlling anything or whatever, but that's fine, because I can have a life of meaning of my own creation. Cool. Cool beans. But the nihilists, they take the materialistic naturalism of a lot of that's contingent upon modern atheism so seriously that they become absolutely miserable. And as a sort of like applying pressure to a wound kind of thing, they want everyone else to feel as miserable as they do. They end up becoming sort of sadistic or sadomasochistic in that, because they figure that if other people can have their fucking day ruined, that somehow it'll make it all better. But when you become a staunch nihilist like that, there's just fucking no coming back from it. Excuse my language.
Okay. Also, I want everyone to look at this because I made the sigil, and looking at it would help charge it. So, yeah, that'd be nice of you guys. Thanks.
You should get GIMP too. It's a really cool program with a lot of different features and stuff to it,
Yep.
and you can do
Good
some
night, Photoshop.
modifications.
I don't need GIMP.
Yeah, then do it. Then do
Okay,
it.
I'm going to put a bunch of links in the chat, which are of videos that me and some of my friends have done debunking atheist videos.
Cool. Cool.
Sometimes a lot of the people in the Hangouts are atheists, actually.
You know what? Hey, I think that's awesome.
It sometimes they get really, really funny because have you guys ever heard of Bionic Dance?
No.
Don't ever watch any of her videos.
Bionic Dance.
Yes.
That name in and of itself sounds bad. Like, whenever you usually have like a bad name for a channel, it usually is, like, if it doesn't sound like... Yeah, let's see how bad this is.
Well, let's just say at one point she says that, like, maybe if we could like just change up something in what's it called? Quantum mechanics, then I'm pretty sure that a square circle could be possible.
What?
She says like fiddling with quantum mechanics or whatever could make a square circle
Does
possible.
she even know what quantum mechanics are?
I don't think so.
Because I've never heard anyone... Like, quantum mechanics are more... Well, never mind. I honestly don't understand it, but I've listened to a couple quantum physicists talk, and never once have I heard them talk about, like, you know...
Square circles?
Yeah, square circles. That's kind of...
Square circles are actually, like, impossible?
And at least in a third dimension. But...
Well, I don't think that's possible for, like, a square, which is a two-dimensional shape, and to be a circle, which is also a two-dimensional shape.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Your square circle.
Thanks.
Huh? Oh.
I'm illogical.
Your mom's a square circle.
Oh.
Oh man.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
It just that's how they're gonna be, man. They are the penultimate troll. They are. They're miserable. They're just miserable. That's what you got to remind yourself. At the end of the day, they are sad, sorry individuals with nothing better to do.
Yep.
I think the village atheist normally is like that, like the ones that just go around trolling on YouTube.
Yeah.
But I know several of them who are much better than that.
A bunch of them. Pretty much all the ones I've met here on the Hangouts these last few months that aren't like that are the ones that you can have a really cool conversation with. And they don't engage in the great debate. That's how you know. If they're in a great debate room, generally, unless they're trying to add a little bit of like logic to the room, stay the fuck away from them. Because that's all they're going to do is yell and scream at you like a child. Like a screaming chihuahua.
I'm thankful that normally I realize that the civil, like the ones that tend to be civil, are the ones that you can generally have a good conversation with.
Yeah. Dude, I know plenty of atheists that are actually wonderful people, and I know plenty of them that aren't wonderful people at all.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I mean, I think it's more based on the person, really, than the philosophy itself. Because I've met plenty of people. I actually met a guy who was Japanese and was all into Shinto, and he honestly, like, he had no respect for his ancestors. He was just a straight up jerk. Like, it was just, yeah.
He's probably into some sort of trend, the aesthetic of it, but not any of the depth of it.
I mean, he was Japanese, so I mean, he came from Japan.
He's a result of bad quantum mechanics.
Yeah. He was a result of a round square.
Oh man.
That's really, really, really terrible logic.
Yes, it is.
You know what? Why don't we go ahead and discuss Reddit's favorite spiritualist, Spirit Science, Jonathan?
Oh God, please.
Or Jordan.
That's what happens when the New Age pukes and makes a website.
I have to go.
All right. Well, it was good talking to you.
Yeah, dude.
Nice talking to you guys too. Keep studying Greek.
Yeah, Will. I hope you come next week. This is great. Thanks.
Maybe I will.
Maybe you will, Will.
I think I probably will.
Kiddo.
I shouldn't have too much next week.
You definitely will.
See you guys.
It's great. I like that. How about yeah. If you guys have not seen Spirit Science, basically this guy, I can give you a this is literally a quote from him. We are evolving from carbon-based beings to crystallite-based beings. And literally, we are going from carbon to crystal. And I'm just curious.
Why don't you like silicon, bruh?
Yeah.
Silicon.
On top of that, even better. All right. He goes on to say that what was it? Oh yeah, Mary and Joseph were from Mars, and Jesus was a Martian.
Yeah, he was solving the men are from Mars, women are from Venus, like.
Oh yeah. Well, no, he even goes. He goes further. And he says Jews are from space, which really wasn't. I know. And I actually posted on his wall. All right. To say that, like, stop stealing intellectual property from Mel Brooks, like.
Mel Brooks.
Yeah.
I was going to say Space Stews kind of sounds like a 1970s sci-fi like B movie maybe, or potentially like an erotica. But that's that's a little frightening.
See Hitler on ice. I love that movie.
So
I
bad.
love that movie so much. But yeah, I actually said I sent him a whole thing on it, which he deleted. Because again, like any criticism that he gets, like he'll respond to, unless he can't respond to it, and then he just immediately he immediately throws it out the window. And
That's what happens. You know,
yes,
when you raise in a religious structure, you find out it's not for you, but you get such a negative experience from it that you reject all structure, all knowledge, all history, and you just adopt this pseudo-spiritual, philosophical nonsense that has no backing in anything. You're so afraid of labeling yourself that you just kind of throw out nonsense.
Yeah.
And it's what you see with New Age. You unfortunately see it with some of the some members of the pagan and the occult community.
Oh yeah,
as well,
yeah.
Buy my product. That's what I think of when I think of half that stuff. What's the catch? What are you trying to sell?
I'm trying to sell you crystals.
Sell you your enlightenment. More crystals,
Your crystals.
So bad.
Yeah, it's pretty. Let's see this. I'm just. I mean, I'm trying to find his page. Apparently, this is the guy who has like 3 million followers on Facebook, though.
Yeah, but it's Facebook. People like add pages indiscriminately because somebody shows it to them.
Yeah,
I see a lot of it. Like people I know who are totally logical, and like I've actually had really long discussions about their beliefs and what they work with and all that kind of stuff. And then they post spirit science stuff on their page. I'm like, have you actually read this guy? Like, there's some weird stuff he's put out there. Kind of creepy. So I don't know. I don't know what's causing it or anything, but it's not the first time. You know, you see this kind of stuff all the time, really.
I mean, this is. I thought there was no one worse than EA coding, and then I found spirit science.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a different kind of crazy. So.
Yeah.
All the colors of crazy. That should be a book, I think. And it has to have a giant crystal on the front for no reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for someone else to talk because like we're the only ones talking.
I'm just actively listening right now.
Oh well.
Active listening. Okay, I see.
I see. You don't want to partake. All right.
We
get it.
Where's your notebook? You know, you need to.
I'm actually at my office, so I'm doing work and listening at the same time.
Oh damn.
Is there any other faith holidays coming up besides for Jews and Christians?
What?
Is there any holidays or auspicious days coming up for any other faith groups besides Jews and Christians?
I don't have any holidays.
No, I don't mean holidays, but I mean like important.
Oh, well, yeah. Is Kwanzaa? I don't know.
Well, pretty much all the festivals for my calendar are pretty much up for the.
Let's see if there's Islamic festivals coming up.
Posadilla just ended, so the next thing that's going to be up will be. Let's see. Numenia will be on the 23rd. And the first sign of the first crescent is on December 23rd on my calendar. It might be off by a day, though. Hecate is Depnon is day before that.
I mean, the solstice is coming up on the 21st.
Yeah, so Yule. To a lot of like neo-pagans, they celebrate Yule. And my heathen friends celebrate Yule, so.
My birthday's on the 22nd, so I sit right between those two events.
You know what? We have a Saturn transition on the 22nd. That's going to be... kind of interesting to see. I shouldn't say that. It's going to be the Capricorn. So I am interested in seeing how that's going to affect me. Don't know if it is or not, but oh boy, guys. Oh boy.
Yeah, Hanukkah starts technically on Wednesday, but in the secular calendar it'll be on Tuesday.
Okay. Well, have a happy Hanukkah.
That's the only reason I asked. I was just curious.
What are you gonna do for Hanukkah like this? Do you do the same thing, or do you mix it up? You do special stuff?
I don't. In comparison to European, Western Jews, I don't really do anything.
No.
I light the menorah in public, and I do special prayers. That's pretty much it. It's not like a major holiday, even though it's been coined that way in the Western world, just because it's in relation to Christmas, I guess. So like my menorah is outside. It's like left of my front door. So I light every day for the next 8 days. I have a candelabra on my front porch facing a major street. Actually, if anybody's on Facebook, part of the Interfaith group, I'll probably make a video of it on the 8th day when it's fully lit, and I'll post a video.
Ooh.
It's like, if anybody's curious.
Wait, is there an Interfaith group on Facebook? Like, I'll join.
Yeah.
Link me.
It's great.
Dude, I wanted to see Hanukkah in Israel so bad because I hear it's
I don't
really
live in
cool.
Israel, but
I hear it's awesome. Like, it's a Christmas in Germany.
I would say it's unfortunate. It's become kind of westernized, but in the sense that it's become Christianized.
And I also go by my pen name online on Facebook, so bear with me.
Yeah, everybody should join the Interfaith group. It's amazing, and people should post more besides just me spamming videos. But my videos are great, and nobody complains.
I bet they are. Your wonderful, wonderful videos.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot, Kevin. It's that time of season. It's the Judaic monotheists versus the polytheistic Hellenist time of season.
Oh yes.
Oh, okay.
I was just playing.
Who would I join with?
I don't know. You're
Oh, boy.
sort of a henotheist, so you'd be the referee, maybe? Uh-huh.
Okay, guys, I want to have a fair fight, alright? Don't even stupid, I'm going to get on you, okay?
Ridiculous.
Hey, John. How are you?
I think he's swirling around. He's like black and white and swirling in the background of colors.
It's kind of making me dizzy.
Yeah.
Round and round we go, swirling, swirling, swirling. Grab your partner, do-si-do. Square dance.
Thank you. Now every time I see a yin-yang, I'm going to be thinking of square dancing. That is so random. Oh, Ruben, come on now. Wasn't that bad? Come on.
Oh boy, I guess you know what? Maybe instead of the referee, I can be like the guy that brings us together, like brings the spirit of the season and brings us together.
The spirit of the season of
Charlie Brown.
monotheism versus polytheism in the winter.
I'll be like I don't know, Charlie Brown. Just be like, guys, don't be blockheads. No, that'd be it wouldn't be Charlie Brown.
If anything, at this time of season, the only thing I have an issue with Kevin and myself is the fact that he's on the southern west coast. I'm on the northern east coast, so that's a big issue I have with him. I'm freezing
Dude,
my
I'm on the
here.
East Coast too of my country.
Hey, it's cool. Just wait like 6 months.
Then
Then I'll be miserable. Because summer starts in like May, and
dude,
California.
in California, is summer like really? I mean, winter. Is it really mild?
Yes.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
It gets like just below freezing for like a week.
Oh, we get like a foot of snow here usually every week. Then it melts away.
What is the hottest it gets for you in the summer?
It's gotten up to 108.
That's an average summer.
Oh, we're also
Where-
at 100% humidity too. Usually.
Try dry heat. It's interesting.
Really? Is it really that bad?
Yeah.
Is it?
It's very, very, very bright. That wonderful, sunshine state thing that everyone likes to say about our state. Stay there a while and see how you feel.
The hottest I remember, it got up here like 35.
Wow.
Oh,
So he's talking Celsius. That's like
yeah. Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot.
Even still.
35, but like I live right like where my city's on a Lake Ontario, so that's like a wet kind of. But that was bad. I've been in worse, but not where I live.
Everything has its advantages and disadvantages.
I mean, really, in truth, you're only looking at 95 degrees Fahrenheit then. If that's the hottest it's ever gotten, that's surprising. Like, 108 is the hottest it's ever gotten over here while I was alive. It's been, like, the hottest it ever got was, like, 120-something. It was
Sorry,
horrible.
where do you live? Sorry.
Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, dude, I hate this place. It's so... Like, it's schizophrenic weather. Like, one time, it's gone from... Like, I'm not even kidding. We had a foot of snow, -6 degrees Fahrenheit, like, in the morning, and by noon, it's 57 degrees and everything's melted. Like, it's so schizophrenic over here. Let's look at the weather for the rest of the week, because I'm not excited for it.
that was good, Doug. That was good. Yes, Reuben is 100% silicon. Everybody knows it.
No, he's 100% Cylon.
Oh, damn. Oh, God.
You see, tomorrow it's going to be 50 degrees. I'm happy.
Yeah. I've been happy for the weather that we get. Our winters are kind of cool. Like, Mediterranean winters are interesting. It's usually rainy season. So we get this kind of middle humidity rain that just it goes off and on. Usually like a few days of rain, and then it's kind of just cold and crisp, but not like super humid, just more than normal. And then we get beautiful skies, and it's like 55, 60 during the day, and it's like that for like 3 months. And it's great. I love it.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a nice winter. Where I'd actually like would be great is if I was a little further up north, we get like a little bit of snow. So it would get down in like 10 or 20 maybe degrees.
Honestly, I hate snow.
I like it. I'm not like huge on it. I mean, I could live pretty much anywhere really, but
Dude,
my only thing is I can't stand it when the weather is too much of the same kind of weather for too long. Like when our summers run really long here, and I'm sitting in fucking my house in late September, it's like, damn it, it's 85. Why is it 85? I get angry. It should
Oh, yeah.
get out of the 80s, you know, the 70s for. So the last few years we've had that kind of really crappy, like we've had longer summers and then it's just rainy and ugly, like ugly rain, and then all of a sudden we just get smacked with the heat again. It's too not sporadic. It's too dramatic of differences.
Mm.
Where it should be a regular transition.
Understandable. Oh boy. So, I mean, I'm gonna use the restroom real quick. I'll be right back.
All right.
Kevin, do you know any practitioners of the Kemetic faith that can join us in Interfaith at some point?
Well, Isabelsa is Kemetic. She's been in here once or twice.
Oh yeah, I don't think I've met her.
Yeah, she was from the old Stickam group, way back in the day.
Oh, maybe next time. I grew up with a bunch, but I haven't interacted with any since like in a couple of years, so it'd be nice.
Yeah. I don't know a ton of Egyptian polytheists. They tend to be kind of rare.
Yeah.
I know a few Greco-Egyptian polytheists, syncretists. I know a few of those.
Like the ones I grew up with, they were like cousins and stuff, so they're like within the same family. So outside of that, I didn't know any others, so I don't know how widespread it would be.
It's widespread, but it's not in high numbers.
Not concentrated either, right?
Not very concentrated. Usually, it's like friends who find each other in an area. Sometimes they'll actually raise their kids in it, but they usually raise them pretty secularly. They're secularly. I'm tongue-tied. Anyway, they raise them in a secular household a lot of times, and they teach them about other religions. And usually, with polytheistic faiths and even like modern, more eclectic forms of paganism, the general rule is you don't really expose your children to religion until later. You might give them some basic kind of ideas to go on, some more abstract ideas, encourage imagination, encourage them to explore. But if you want to teach them, it's kind of the thing of like, okay, you know, you're a teenager now, this is what we do. Are you interested in seeing how it works and learning some stuff? And then it's like, here's a bunch of books. Get back to me in 3 months.
She's sorry, just with a cat's bothering me 1 second.
Gotcha.
She's European, I suppose, from the name.
Uh-huh. I'm sorry, did you ask a question?
Yeah, I was asking if she was European because of her name.
She lives in America. She lives Midwest, but she's Romani. Yeah, just like Ruben and Doug were saying.
Oh, Romani. Okay, that's cool. Yeah.
So what is a Romani?
A Romani is, the modern term that's used.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Did not know that.
Yeah. She's cool.
Does she do cartomancy?
I did.
I don't know how much of her Romani tradition she's kept.
I hope so, because we could share something then.
I lived with gypsies for a couple of summers, but in Finland, not Romani. They're different, but I wonder how similar they are.
I don't know, man. I don't know. My candle's almost burned out.
There was a movie, I think, they talked about tribes of gypsies, like in Romania and other parts of Europe and some Middle Eastern countries, but it I think it was really focusing on Spain. And the dance that they do is very similar to people from India. The movements and, the colors. And I spoke to this gypsy. He was Romani, I believe. He was from that area, and he said basically they're from India, that migrated to Europe.
whatever the case may be, they've intermingled with many different cultures over the years, have been associated both accurately and inaccurately to a variety of different cultures with all sorts of different names, some of them pejoratively. But they are one of the last nomadic peoples that have lived in and around society, and have been, very vehemently so in some instances. Yeah, definitely.
So because I haven't been able to do this in a while, and I need to get my mojo back and all the oomph, anyone want a reading tonight?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
I'm doing cartomancy readings. Card reading.
Oh.
We had it a few times ago, and a few hangouts ago, and we were having a whole night of that. It was actually kind of interesting. So, if you want to do that like external or whatever, or maybe in somebody's PM, that's cool. I just don't want to necessarily broadside everybody with it. That's not what they're kind of doing at the moment. Different crowd today.
That's okay if there's no takers. That's fine.
Okay. Well, thanks for the offer. That's cool. So, especially in my group, I mean, we're definitely more for that. Well, more alternative.
Anyways, I'm going to jump to Nadia's room. I'm just jumping in 3 different rooms right now, so I'll be back in a bit.
Okay. See you later. Take care, okay? Be safe with that.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to pose a question. That's all.
Okay.
Frank, what I never asked this before, but what order do you belong to?
Lovely.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yes.
Okay. For those who don't know, care to expand upon that?
Well, Mevlevis are, usually they're described as whirling dervishes. They usually whirl. It began after Rumi, Muhammad al-Baq, basically. And if you ever read Rumi poetry, and Rumi is kind of the westernized, type of outlook on things, but the order is actually based in Konya, Turkey. But is usually from that area. Usually, Rumi was actually born in Afghanistan, part of the Persian Empire back then. And basically, the order, it's not like it used to be. Like, in order for you to be like an initiate, you had to, you have to go through training for like 1,001 days, basically, and then you become fully, a dervish. But however, because of modern times, we don't do that. Basically, the philosophy and the practice is basically the practice of love and unification of the divine. The basis is within the Quran. However, you don't have to be supposedly a Muslim to actually join the Mevlevi order. You could be any type of belief, and we're pretty much open to that. But for me in particular, I'm Muslim. However, I do belong, to the Mevlevi order, and it's been a long time, and it's kind of strange because my outlook has, how you say, like refined in a sense, and you go through a period of refinement, with your spiritual and your worldly existence. So it's you know, a lot of the poetry comes from a lot of his writings, and how this developed, it developed through Shams Tabriz, basically Rumi's teacher. You have to keep in mind that Rumi was an established Islamic scholar. You know, Shams Tabriz came afterwards. And there's a story that goes that one time he was in his class, Shams Tabriz just came up for the first time and basically took his books and just put it on the fire. And, you know, he was basically shocked. And then this is when the relationship happened. And a lot of the poetry actually stems when he met Shams Tabriz. That's basically it. Hold on 1 second. I'm rambling, actually. I'm actually rambling on this.
No, it's great.
Yeah, so it's hard to start, but it is.
So, what brought you into that particular order, let alone Sufism, let alone Islam in general?
Well, it's kind of strange. I was just exploring, basically. I was really into like yoga and a lot of, not New Age, but basically a lot of Hindu texts and Rigveda. So I was really looking for a practice, and I had, you know, my circles, a lot of my friends were Muslims, but however, they were more about the identity of it instead of the practice. So I actually went out to search myself, and I started reading upon it, and I was really interested in it. However, I had issues with a lot of the way, you know, the religion actually viewed the world, and I felt that it was, you know, a lot of concepts like Christianity, it was no different, but what attracted me was more of the practice. However, you know, and mind you, like I was going through a Salafist mosque, and it's almost like you had to change your whole identity, and I didn't want to do that. I was looking for something much more. And then I saw this retreat, and it was the Mabari order, and I went, and literally that's when I really truly converted. I was like, this is for me, this is what I want to do. I just found it. I couldn't believe what I just found. And it beautified actually my concept of Islam, and I actually understood what the Quran was saying for the first time, but internally, not so much somebody speaking, but literally, you know, having no concepts of what the Quran is meant to say. It was literal but symbolic at the same time. It was really hard to explain, but the experience that I had was more emotional than anything. The rationalization and, you know, came later on. It kind of progressed from there. And again, it was like I was going through a period of refinement and how I related to the world. So it was very internal, it was very personal. I never felt that I had to defend my faith. It was nothing about that or wanted to know it was true. It was something that I had to find within myself, that I had to start maturing as a person. Thus, things started happening where I got married, I started having a family, and my spiritual struggle was, even though it was getting harder, it put things in perspective, and it put things that I could actually see the beauty of my pain and my struggle. And through the guidance of my faith, it helped me, to go through a lot of things I had to go through. So my faith was actually a great benefit to me. And I was able, and uniquely, for the first time, I was able to see other faiths as, and even much more beautiful, and I enjoyed seeing it. I enjoyed seeing other faiths, and I enjoyed seeing other perspectives and different philosophies. I wasn't in the shell that I had the truth. It had nothing to do with that. It was just something that I was just free from. And I feel that way. I'm free from that, and I feel that I'm free. And I'm able to enjoy, like I could go to an atheistic room. Some of them are a little bit too much, and I have to go. But more times than not, I just like to enjoy the conversation and listen and learn at the same time.
Right.
But I never felt defensive about Islam or anything like that, because I felt that me internally, I kind of knew what it was and knew what it meant. And sometimes it is kind of a struggle, because sometimes it's hard to explain in words. However, at the end of the day, I feel fine. I feel good.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, because I feel the same thing about my faith. Like maybe in the past year and a half, I've been able to come to that conclusion. I'm still struggling with that same kind of impulse when it comes to Christians, just because it's a little bit, it irks me still a little bit. But I mean, from the wider view, I can completely see definitely other people's point of view and relate to it. I don't have to agree with it, but it's not threatening in the least bit, and I don't have to feel defensive with so many other people, unfortunately. But I think that comes from something that's more innate in humanity versus what your actual faith tradition teaches. It's the idea of it's more of a survival instinct. It's less to do I think I've read a book. Unfortunately, I don't remember the title. It's the idea, but it's written by he's actually a deist. I'm pretty sure he's a deist, but he's talking about the survival instinct when it comes to faith and philosophy, and how that applies. But he's pretty much saying that what spirituality is supposed to transcend the survival instinct, but so many people who claim to be spiritual, or more so people who claim to be religious, don't transcend the survival instinct, even though that's what their tradition is supposed to be teaching, in the sense that they feel threatened, they have to be on the defensive, they have to know more, they have to be bigger, they have to be stronger than the other, they have to conquer, destroy. That's he's saying even though all innately spirituality and religion is supposed to teach is the rejection of that, is that unfortunately throughout history it's the opposite, whereas the survival instinct has dominated the faith of the philosophy, so that the faith and philosophy now becomes a conquering methodology of saying I have the truth, and I'm going to not just necessarily impose it on others, but if somebody confronts me with it, I have to challenge them and I have to prove them wrong, and not just being able to shrug it off, kind of idea. And he's saying the idea of actually coming into spirituality, I'll use a blanket term, but coming into that kind of concept is the idea of what the physical outside world confronts you with doesn't affect you. That's the whole point. It's the idea that you know where you're at, you know what you're supposed to do, and whatever's around you comes at you is supposed to be frivolous. It's not supposed to be anything that you register with, where it's been the opposite. And he's arguing from the past 150 years, it's been the complete opposite, where people have lived in pluralistic societies, and since they've been living in pluralistic societies, that means I have to be on my guard, I have to be on the street corner, I have to, you know what I mean? And I find that very interesting, that it's more, it seemed to be as a renaissance when people are well, I can believe what I believe, and I can know what's true, and what you believe doesn't necessarily affect you, and it seemed to be kind of more of like a higher view of the world, when ideally it's supposed to be like your fundamental view, where the idea of like, you know what's true and the outside world shouldn't affect you, and you should be able to speak your views without feeling threatened. But unfortunately, as the internet has shown, that's not the case.
Right.
Well, it's interesting when you guys were talking about your experiences with different points of view in a way, and particularly atheists, I'm in the realm of mental health, and I speak to a lot of people, and some of the issues that I come across with is that a lot of people who are very insecure tend to talk big about themselves.
Yes.
They have something to prove. They have something to say, and I always say it's not so much about the beliefs, but look at what they're doing. It's a whole gestalt of behavior that's happening, and when you're able to see that, you're able to see what that person truly is saying. That's why, some people will get very defensive if they're being lied to. However, I don't, because even that lie, they're telling me something. They're telling me something very significant. And eventually, the whole thing here, in this office, when people come in, is for them to feel as comfortable as they can that they're allowed to lie here and not be reprimanded, because they don't know how to express the truth in a way. They can't really express because they've been so conditioned in a way. And I don't take things as personally like that, especially when we're talking about different ideas, because I'm seeing not so much different ideas, but I'm seeing actual behavior, and they're telling me something. Even though their lips, they're speaking, they're saying something, but they're also telling me something else too. So.
Well, yeah, that's very cool. The one thing I wanted to talk about for a little bit, if it was okay. Has anyone? I don't know if I brought him up before. Has anyone heard of David Griffin? If anyone would be, Kevin. No? Okay. You probably heard of the Order of the Golden Dawn, am I correct? Not the political party. Okay.
Oh no, I heard of it. Yes.
Okay, so I want you to look at this Facebook group and see in the first row there is a man named David Griffin. Okay? And here's the thing about it. This guy professes to be, follow the philosophies of the Golden Dawn to the T. He says that he carries on a tradition. Notice what the name of this group is.
Yeah, because we can't actually see the post as we're not in the group. It's a closed group, but we do know what the group is, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Notice that this man, and he's blocked it off for good reason, because here's the thing. And this is going back to what I said before between mysticism and magia.
Mm-hmm.
This man has personally killed off all forms of mysticism in Golden Dawn.
Oh, so he's an armchair occultist.
No. No. He's a fraud. Well, at that, yeah. But he's also very much an EA coding / Michael Ford individual. And for those who don't know it, look him up, and you can. If you look up EA coding, trust me, it's the most cringeworthy thing you'll ever see in your life. Guy's basically, I'm dark and powerful, ugh! And he recently got arrested for meth, which doesn't surprise me at all. Yeah, go ahead and put a definition for that. Because
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
If you could define it.
No. I have a really good definition for it. Just give me a second.
If you could verbalize it just for the.
Yeah. I'm gonna verbalize it because it's rather specific.
But this goes back to the whole thing of philosophy is dying. In practice, philosophy is dying. In my practice, in the Hermetic practice, and it's no longer Hermeticism. It's been replaced with chaos philosophy or chaos mathematics.
It's the postmodernism has been applied
Yes.
to the Western esoteric tradition. It's been going on since about the mid 1970s.
And I mean, it was, and Rigardi openly spoke against it.
Yeah, of course.
Well, he was he was a big one. I mean, if you read the Garden of Pomegranates with, I mean,
I read it.
I
Not my
actually,
tradition, but I read it.
I liked it a lot. That's helped me a lot. And the 1 year manual, also I like too. But it's no longer, the philosophy isn't there, the structure isn't there. And basically, here's the problem. Everything's getting wrapped up in chaos magic. Like, that's all of it. It's all just being absorbed into this one thing. That's all it is. It's nothing matters, and that's the big problem with it. And that's why this guy does not need to be part of the organization called the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, since chaos magic is not hermetic. It follows no philosophy other than nothing matters, everything goes. So essentially, you can do whatever you want. It's pretty much.
It's piracy. They openly admit it. They call it paradigmal piracy. They take belief systems and relegate them to tools. It's like you think of it this way: if magic itself is a tool that was used traditionally, historically, as an element for change, they've actually got to such an extent where they are so anti-tradition that they make traditions into the tools to use for magic. They have that much degree of. That's why they're called radical eclectics. They're so incredibly anti-tradition and anti-structure, anti-authority, anti-belief that they have to exploit it for the uses of it. And there's a feeling in chaos magic that it's the same kind of postmodernism you see in art. People who are doing it for its own sake. They really want to stir the pot.
And I've heard them use the excuse that it's similar to Zen, in that they do it to do it.
Yeah, but that attribution doesn't hold as much water.
No, it doesn't. But again, these are the people who really don't care what happens. No. It's nihilism, is what it is.
Don't even worry about it, because seriously, a few years down the line, because most of the chaots I know are young, usually they get to a certain point a few years down the line where they're like, wow, this has no substance, what am I going to do? So they go back to the drawing board and find something that actually works for them.
Yeah.
They go in because they like the name and like the iconography or something, right?
Yeah, they like the iconoclasm. They like the sort of rebellious aspect that it's taboo, because they actually use belief systems as a means to exploitation. But once they actually start exploring things in mysticism, then they start being, well, why am I doing this?
Yeah, here's the thing, though. There are people who are actively working to destroy the philosophy of the underlying philosophy, because they view it as quote-unquote oppressive. They're
trying to destroy which philosophy? The early Hermetic philosophies?
Yes.
Okay, because your connect there logic-wise was a little disjointed.
Yeah.
Of course, because largely the reasons why chaos actually go into chaos magic, it is effectively an occult tradition that branched off of earlier ceremonial traditions like
Yeah, that's
Golden
essentially
Dawn.
what. Yeah,
That's their father. They're the rebellious teenager, and they hate their dad. That's what that is.
and yeah, and I'm not gonna say
No,
like,
I have a,
yeah, what's up?
I'm sorry. I was just going to ask a question. How long did this type of philosophy or point of view actually last? Does it have staying power, or it just dies off and then just forms it into something else?
I know a few chaos who still practice. They're in their 30s and 40s, but you have to understand, chaos magic has only been around since about the 1970s.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's only a little older than, say, Reconstructionist polytheism, which is kind of a part that I practice. The earliest forms of that are Egyptian polytheism. It came sort of post-hippie era. Like a lot of the stuff that was developing in the alternative spirituality communities were just a direct result of that sort of social change. People were actually starting to look at sort of things that they were doing in Britain with traditional magic and what they were doing with ceremonial magic, and things were being printed more often. There was more of an exchange of information. And also Eastern spirituality, Sufism. I mean, how many people have you heard who've read Rumi when they were, in college in the 70s or 80s? So a lot of these things were being exposed to people. So a lot of these new traditions came out. They wanted to be the new thing. They wanted to be the new rebellion. And so they started around the 70s. It was very relegated to a group called Toffee, the Temple of Psychic Youth. They were a small occult order, and around the 1980s they really started to develop more. By the 1990s and early 2000s, they had already done online rituals, and they were starting to go in this sort of direction of like technomancy, as they called it. So it's interesting. The things they've done are actually pretty involved. The problem with chaos magic as an esoteric order is not the orders, it's the people who are uninitiated. It's the same problem with modern Wicca, it's the same problem with Hermetic forms. How can you practice an essentially initiatory tradition by yourself? You can't. You could practice a pagan tradition, an indigenous polytheistic tradition, but really at the end of the day, unless you have some kind of group, online or offline, where you can share knowledge and grow spiritually, then you don't really have a spirituality.
Are you sorry, not to butt in, I just came back, but are you speaking from the concept of having a community, or more so the concept of having a teacher or a guide?
Well, personally, I think every spirituality, even if it's minor like my own, should have some form of community, whether it's online or offline. In my case, I have to have it online because there's so few of us around the world practicing Hellenismos. And it's definitely true of modern religions, world religions that have been around a while and have a lot of people, various other alternative spiritualities, and occultism. The thing is with occultism that's very particular, it's initiatory. It involves getting into secret knowledge that is endemic or is a part of a particular order. If you're trying to practice that outside of that, it's going to just fall apart. That's why a lot of modern Wicca isn't actually Wicca. It's Wicca. It's Neo-Wicca. Because it's created based on the stuff that was available for outer court for people that could just read in a book, but none of the inner order stuff that you actually learn from an actual order or an organization and their particular materials was really disseminated. So it became this very shallow kind of washed form of it. And you have a lot of that basically going on in occultism. I honestly believe that's actually why things like chaos magic actually came out, because it was around the same time that all this other stuff was kind of coming about. 1970s and early 80s, that's where you had a lot of the post-Thelemic stuff, the kind of offshoots of the OTO and all that kind of stuff. I'm not an occultist, but I've studied a lot of occultism, and I see the same thing repeated over and over again.
I heard, and I'm posting this as a question, but I heard that chaos magic is almost like a troll tradition, kind of like how Satanism kind of came about.
Okay.
Like, I don't care about anything. I'm going to take what I want for my own needs, and your traditions mean nothing because they're completely irrelevant and they're fairy tales, and I'm just going to utilize what you have for my own benefit.
In some cases, yes. It also depends. The thing about chaos magic is it's so personalized. The individual who practices it will there's no underlying philosophy except there are no rules. So I mean the person who does practice it could be a complete nihilist, or they could be very, very caring and very, very loving. Who knows? I mean, all ultimately it is something without tradition. It has no base tradition. And all it is just tool work. It's basic, just achieving results without having to worry about using any real methods whatsoever, traditional methods.
They want to take out all the unseemly
Yes.
elements of spiritual practice, the
Unseen.
flavorings, the things that actually make things interesting and complex and actually beautiful. But they see those all as frailties. They see every complexity, every nuance of a particular culture, spiritual tradition, or whatever the case may be, as effectively a frailty, that everything is broken, and that it is their job as a paradigmal pirate to construct their own paradigm based on these external elements, taking them as they see fit because of a single credo that was left in a single piece of writing by the Temple of Psychic Youth, which says, nothing is true, everything is permitted.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That could be taken to a whole different. That could actually be taken from a Zen perspective. It doesn't mean that there's no truth in the world. It means that there's no absolute. Everything is permitted, but it's meant to make you think in the way of a Zen koan. If everything's permitted, then it's up to me, it's my responsibility to actually figure out what is valid. But they don't take that step. They just think that everything is whatever they want it to be.
And the biggest problem comes when they personally have infiltrated all other orders.
Yes.
Namely being the Golden Dawn and the
Of course.
Oasis.
So that's where Path got the idea, and I've heard this repeated. They're effectively trolls in the alternative spirituality community.
And I wouldn't call them trolls as much as parasites.
Yes. Getting back to something that Path was asking me before, because we were mentioning the bridge between magic and mysticism. He wanted an explanation of magia, the original Greek form of magic. Are you still there, Path?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Would you like that definition?
Oh yeah, for sure, no doubt.
I'll give you one definition, and there's a second word that I should really explain to you because it's very indicative to the kinds of things he's been bringing out. The first word is magia. You have words like magica, which means acts of magies, magico, that which is magical, and then the magos, who is one who performs magic. That's where we get the idea of the magician from. A magesa is actually a woman who performs it, but was not very often used. The magus was almost always associated with a male energy. That's why there's a tarot card of the magician. It's a male.
Yeah.
Magia is any attempt to influence parts of the cosmic whole through the exploitation of the close link of its components by the use of sympathy and harmony. So the most basic definition of magic is influencing cosmic circumstances. So you can take that many different ways, and the group in Greece that practices Hananismos, one of the main groups, they have a fairly negative view of it. They were saying that Plotinus believed that the purpose of magic was the ascent of psyche, of the soul, to itself, and that when the state is achieved, it becomes void of external influences and a perfect state. This state, anodos, is achieved through two paths: the erotike and the philosophike. The erotike is actually turning away from physical beauty, and the second is reinforcement of physical and intellectual predisposition. It involves eros, and there's a lot of things that kind of go into that. With the sort of Christian mysticism, it's through mercy and supplication, but the view of a lot of Neoplatonists and the kinds of people who would have practiced this, especially the later Neoplatonists, it was done through more of a contemplative and esoteric form. The second definition that's really important to understand, and I'll explain why. Magic is a basic thing. It's a tool. It's something to use to influence cosmic harmony. But a term that was particularly used later, and it usually refers to Hellenistic thought, is the term theurgy or theurgia. And that one's a really interesting one. It has somewhat of a different kind of connotation. It refers to a divine work as a ceremonial act that aims at direct communication with the gods. It was proposed by the Neoplatonists, and it was originally more of a philosophical or meditative practice. In later centuries and even later decades, depending on the philosopher, it became more ceremonialized, more ritualistic, and usually was associated with a sort of magico-religious connotation, that effectively magic and theurgy were blended. And that's what I meant several hours ago about Hermeticism basically being a blend of these two worlds. But this concept could be used by anybody. And it has to go into the key understanding of the word. There's a word theurgos. Ergos, deriving from demiurgos, is he who produces the work for the benefit of common things. Thus rendering the meaning of theurgia to be the production of the work for the benefit of divine things. So in a sort of very nerdy analogy I could use for you, this is divine magic, as opposed to arcane magic like in D&D. Theurgy is kind of taking from the divine what it gives to you for use in the world. And that is basically probably the penultimate form of mysticism. Actually making changes in your world and the world around you through that connection. It's a more internal-based kind of change. Magic is more mechanistic. It's a sort of act, the creation of a charm or sigil or a phylactery, like a particular device that implements a sort of magical philosophy. It was particularly common in Hermeticism. So a lot of these terms that people use are mistaken. And mysticism particularly is actually another definition that people commonly screw up because they don't know any Greek, they don't study any of the words. This is one particularly that is controversial. This group actually believes that it's the irrational and incomprehensible attempt to approach the divine and eternal aletheia, truth, through various techniques of direct contact with something that is supposed to be simultaneously comprehensible and accessible. Basically, they are maligning Neoplatonists who have a belief in a higher kind of spiritual aspect. The Greeks, the traditional classic Greeks, the religion itself was animistic. The view was that the gods were immanent in all things. The world is eternal, unbegotten, uncreated, that there was no actual beginning to the universe, only beginning to the world in which we can conceive. And mystic materialism is a sort of concept that ties into that there are essential substances, primordial substances in which the world is made of. So effectively any spiritual content, whether it's the idea of fire as a spiritual concept or water, or the idea of the human soul, the idea of the afterlife and where the gods roam, it's all a part of the whole symphon, the whole universe. Cosmos being that which we can perceive in the world with our own mind, with our own logos. So mysticism, in the modern term of it, means something very different than mystikismus. Mysticism really shouldn't have the negative connotation it does, not even the Greek form, because mystikos, mystis, in Greek really just kind of means hidden. It doesn't mean higher, it just means hidden. So I actually take a more positive view of it, and I know a lot of Hellenists who feel the same way, that mystikismus is just a deepening of those relationships that you already have. Your devotional relationships you have with the gods becomes deepened through ritual through regular sacrifice, regular honoring, and ritual piety and all that sort of thing. But there's a lot of sort of stigma, and there's this line that's cut between the classical era of Greece, this very animistic, non-magical world that they want to create, and the Hellenistic world, which is incredibly magical and occultic. So a lot of people seem to want to stay on two sides of the fence. The reality is there were many different philosophies, and that to relegate it to any one thing, to say mystikismos only means this, theoria means this, and magia means this, is wrong. It's stupid. Because every philosophy, like Logos is a perfect example of this. There's like 15 different ways that Logos could be interpreted, whether you're a Neoplatonist, an Orphic, or a Christian. There's all these different sorts of ways of looking at it. So I hope that this long-winded explanation will actually help you understand the very complicated nature of mysticism and magic in Greece.
Yeah, I can definitely break it down easier now. I don't know how a novice would, but since I knew some of the background you're talking about, for sure, that makes a lot more sense. Especially the division between the earlier and the later Greek traditions, like the Hellenism versus before. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, Hellenistic versus Hellenic. Hellenic being early Greek. Hellenistic being late, like Roman. And like a big separation is like Plotinus, who was much earlier, like kind of bridging the gap, and then Iamblichus, who was much later, and his beliefs were much more similar to Hermetic and even Christian thought than they were actually Greek religion.
Can you spell that name?
Iamblichus?
Yeah.
Well, the way that you would actually
like an anglicized, yeah.
Yeah, it would be the Anglicus, Iamblichus, like that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
The Roman pantheon have the same amount of deities as the Greeks. The Greeks have like 13 or 12,
yeah.
right?
Okay. The simple answer is the main deities in Greek and Roman.
Not the demi. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
The core pantheon, the Olympic pantheon, was the same. It was basically the same. There was some variants, but they were basically the same. Just different names for a lot of cases, except Apollo, who had the same name. Apollon to the Greeks and Apollo to the Romans. But their other deities, very much they did syncretize, but there was a lot that were totally different. They also had a bunch of foreign deities that they had, like they had the cult of the unknown god. That was a big thing. Mm-hmm. There would be some unknown deity that would be worshipped in a particular area that would be set aside. Sometimes it would be civil, like the Greeks did, or Isis, or Mithras. It was the Roman period and the whole Hellenistic basically are kind of the same general area. And when many people refer to it, there weren't exactly, but that period was full of a lot of mixing. The very word that the Greeks used to describe the Romans is where we get the word eclectic from, eklektikismos, which means it sort of means a vestige of the actual meaning. It's a mask or a dressing of meaning. That's how they saw eclectikismos. It's, oh, you're just wearing this. You don't fucking know what it means. You're just fucking dressing your altar this way. So they had this very sort of view of a lot of Romans as kind of just being superficial and topical, whereas they saw indigenous Roman religion as actually being a sort of cousin of Greek and being more of a tradition that they could appreciate. But the public cultus was very all over the place in some cases.
Fair enough. Sorry. Is in the Greek tradition there's like a concept of like you have like a pata, like bez, not like as in the deity, but the concept of like there's like a proto deity that like was like borrowed in a sense. So like you have like bez or pata is drastically different from all the other deities in Egypt, so much so that he's even like carved on the walls differently. Like he's carved like face forward. He's not carved in like the silhouette form as all the other deities. He's short, he's ugly, he's squat. and you could see him traced back from like earlier civilizations, like down the Nile. Is there something like that in Greece where you have like kind of like a proto-entity that's drastically different in characteristic, style, and imagery from the rest of the pantheon? Is there something like that similar?
Simple answer to your question? No. Categorically, no. The Greeks were known very, very well for Hellenizing everything that came into contact with them. Now, that being said, pretty much all of the deities in the Greek pantheon were the result of tons of cultural mixing and years, centuries even, of enculturation of different concepts. Dionysus seeming to have very many connections to the Near East, Apollo seeming to have a lot more connections to the sort of light of the north, Hyperborea, the obviously Celtic and Germanic cultures. Some of them seem to have more Etruscan or earlier Mycenaean Greek or even Minoan concepps. I mean, there's a lot of concepts with Athena and Artemis that seem to echo back to much earlier cultures, even ones that were matriarchal. So, I mean, there's a lot going on with the Greek pantheon. That's what's so fascinating about it, is there's so much that actually made it up. How would I explain this? If you had a proto-concept as sort of like a seasoning that would be used in every freaking soup, curry always uses curry. So curry would be taken and used in a different way. The Greeks were like fine-tuning the soup. Like every so often, every few centuries, with every different philosophical school, there was a new thing added to the soup recipe and changed and modified, because they were very much about perfecting culture. They were very much about the sort of city center, about the cultus, about order and structure and beauty and complication and aesthetic. Everything to them was important to the construction of religion. But in Hellenistic Greece, that's totally fucking different, because at that time they were incorporating all sorts of ideas. An interesting deity for you to look into, just to see how freaking crazy, is Hermanubis. That's a deity. It's a mixture of Hermes and Anubis.
Strangely enough, I actually just read about that today. Someone posted about it.
Also, Zeus Ammon, who looked like a bearded Zeus with a giant pillar with these filigrees all in and around it. And he had a three-headed dog. That is a mixture of so many different mythologies, I don't want to even go into it.
Wait, could you post that? Because that sounds pretty cool.
Zeus Ammon, let me get you a proper spelling.
I heard there's some coins of Alexander where he has horns, and it's like also supposed to see as like a merging of two different.
Yes. We actually, one of the forms of the syncretic Zeus Ammon, actually has horns.
Oh, okay, that's maybe what I was thinking of. Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I confused two deities for those listening. Zeus Ammon is the version that's primal and has the horns. Serapis is a deity correlated to Zeus who has clear Egyptian mixing going on.
Right,
so,
right.
Yes. That is a ridiculous version of Zeus Ammon. Thank you, Griffin. So,
I will be the first one to admit that not necessarily. What's his name? I've worked with Anubis recently for something I've been doing, and I'm just hoping he will come through. So,
who are you working with exactly?
Why mine disappeared? What? Oh, what? This is my little title bar went away.
You have to just click it off and then click it on again.
I did. Oh well. Big reveal.
Did you click the preset?
Yeah.
Oh, that's weird.
Let's see. Hold up. Oh well.
Why do for lack of a better term, neo-pagans or not to be offensive, whatever other term that might apply to this, why do they venerate Cthulhu, even though it's an archetype?
Okay, I can
I'll
speak
feel
for this
this.
because
I'll feel this one for him. Okay. Cthulhu is only honored by eclectics, pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty
So
much anybody who is eclectic or modernized or neo anything. Anybody who's a traditionalist, anybody who's a reconstructionist thinks that's complete crap. And many
Yeah.
of my Sumerian and Near East polytheists resent it openly.
oh yeah,
Because it's tied into the same kind of crazy as frickin' Zachariah Stitchin. And I will also link that. There is a website that everyone who knows anything of what that is should read.
Yeah.
there is a book in Chaos Magic written, I forget the writer, or the author, of the Pseudonomicon, and the Pseudonomicon is basically, again, work with Chaos Magic with the Elder Gods.
It comes down to people who think that anything is worshipable, anything is worshipable, or whatever, so we can worship whatever. What they don't realize is they're basically stuck somewhere in between an actual pagan or polytheist and an atheist who jokingly worships fucking the flying spaghetti monster.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, because I doubt they actually think that H.P. Lovecraft actually made a mythology because he actually believed that.
No, he was an atheist.
Right,
Openly.
that's what I'm trying to think. Like, I don't understand why they invest in the concept of a Cthulhu. They realize it's just
because
like,
their path is so shallow that they've resulted in worshiping fucking Cthulhu. They're 2 steps away from worshiping fucking Santa Claus or Superman.
But do they recognize that? That's what I'm trying to understand.
No, they're so full of fucking fluff, and that's why we actually have the term fluffy bunny to describe these kinds of shallow pagans. They're so full of fluff and glitter, and they're so afraid of any kind of structure or labeling, they'll worship anything.
Yeah, again, the whole thing with the veneration of archetypal entities, it comes from a lack, I'd say, of respect.
A lack of actual belief of the gods that they're actually venerated.
Yeah, a lack. Yeah,
they've
exactly.
They've internalized the aspect that their gods mean nothing.
They are nothing but psychological concepts.
And it started with Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell, or neo-Jungian interpretations of what Carl Jung was actually doing.
Again, I have a massive respect for Campbell, but again, he only sees it from one side. I see it from both, and again, as a Hermeticist, I think that's appropriate. At the same time, I like you said with Levian Satanism, yeah. Again, I'd actually like to touch on this because with LeVay didn't really worship anything. Satanism, and the one guy, if you want to look up anything on Satanism, I had an interview with him before, and I know Kevin has some issues. Is Styx Hexenhammer 666 on YouTube, and basically anything Satanism is his stuff, and I'll link you directly to him.
He's actually a pretty decent guy.
He's a pretty decent guy. He's honest. He's very knowledgeable.
Yeah.
But he is kind of a jerk. And he's really into the conspiracy stuff. So I'll try to find his. Yeah, his books. Not. I think. Yeah, if you want to know anything about, and I'd love for him to get in the chat. As long as you all would be okay with it. If not, then we definitely won't.
As long as he doesn't go on a conspiratorial diatribe, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, the thing is, he will.
Doug, are you there?
He kind of falls asleep often.
Yeah, I guess not.
But I will say, I've gotten into, I've learned a lot about Satanism and Luciferianism. They're not exactly the same,
No.
but
Actually, now you brought it up. Well, I guess I brought it up, but now that you were talking about it, I was actually reading recently, like maybe less than a week ago, maybe just about a week, last week, but like less than a week. I was reading about theistic Satanism, and I thought that was very interesting. I'd like to
yeah,
I'd like to like have like a conclusive like like preferably like a video like some or like at least somebody who is a theistic Satanist talk about it. Because the only Satanism I've only known is like an atheistic point of view, almost like kind of like either like very serious about their mythology, or like the atheist troll Satanists who are like, I just hate Christianity and I'm going to do the opposite. But I've never heard of like theistic Satanists really.
The one quote unquote theistic Satanist I've known, I actually almost tried to have a conversation with him, but he refused, was EA Coding. And I get a quote that he's more just like, I'm real dark and powerful, and everyone should listen to me because I'm like all knowledgeable and stuff, which he's not.
My view of Satanism is basically kind of as thus. Why not just have a dark patron, be a part of a particular religious tradition, and become a devotee of a particular deity that has that domain?
Like Seth or something.
Yeah, exactly, Seth, or maybe not necessarily all that dark, but there's plenty that have those connotations. There are chthonic deities in nearly every pantheon. There are ones that are associated with chaos, like Pan. There's ones associated with love and pleasure, like Dionysus or Eros, just use the Greek tradition. And there's plenty of other ones from all sorts of different traditions. So I don't see its purpose. Unless you're trying to do a sort of LHP version, left-hand path version of ceremonial magic that works with Klipothic, like inverted kind of Kabbalah, but then you're getting into some really weird areas of ceremonialism.
Yeah. I have some strange. I shouldn't say strange. I have a very non-traditional view of Clipoff, in which I don't believe it's necessarily bad, and I know most people involved in Hermetics would probably like strangle me for saying that. I say while it is a form of imbalance, imbalance can it kind of works against itself. So when you are imbalanced, you realize why you're imbalanced, and when you can realize that, you can use that knowledge for future reference, learning from it basically. So if you, yeah, Kevin, go ahead.
There's some kind of truth to what you're saying. I kind of clarify a little bit. In many esoteric, in many mysteries, there was a simulation, ritualistically speaking, of death and rebirth. The Dionysian was particularly known for that. It would bring you to a state of chaos and fear, or just pure sensory deprivation, that you would get into a state that was very ecstatic. And then you would come out of that darkness into more excitatory type of gnosis, ecstasis, ecstasy. So there'd be drinking and dancing, lots of movement, and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So there are many different types of Gnostic experiences that are explored depending on what tradition you're speaking of. But focus on death, it's taboo, but it exists, and there are aspects of various religious and esoteric traditions that do focus on it. Some of which were actually public cults, like Set or Anubis in Egyptian religion. So
Yeah.
it just depends. But a lot of people who kind of go to that kind of very shallow form of Satanism usually don't do a lot of study. They latch onto something that seems dark and spooky, and that's about it.
Again, yeah, that's kind of like the yeah.
Sorry.
It's yeah. There's now even I actually and he's not a cat, and yes, I will say he. I was talking to this guy just the other day, and for his invocation, he's been saying that, you know how the gods change, our perception of the gods change. Not the gods themselves, but our perception of them can change over time. And basically, I don't know how he does it or why he does it, but he uses a shamanistic method in which he lets the gods take form in his mind, and he'll sometimes draw it or write down whatever that is, and whatever form they take, you know, he'll try to use that as the resemblance for his own personal interpretation. I thought that was kind of neat.
Even among traditionalists, the idea of personal gnosis is something, ideally speaking, though there are examples of people who are very idiotic about it, where it is respected. It's usually in a more or less topical manner and less essential. So the essential nature of a deity obviously doesn't change. The core myths are still there. The things that are traditionally associated with said god are still there, but variances can exist that could be applied differently. So if, for instance, I found out through years of ritual or even months or weeks that a particular deity preferred coffee that is not historical in ancient Greece, I could, in my personal rites, use libations of coffee or offerings or sacrament of sort of coffee thing. Would I use that in a public ritual? No, probably not. Unless it was an esoteric order or specific coven or cabal or whatever the case may be, where our specific group is isolated and private, has a particular personal gnosis that we've cultivated in a mystery. But public religion, fuck no. You stick to what you know. You stick to what's traditional. That personal and private can be varied. That you can be varied.
I would agree with that, even from my tradition. That's definitely makes complete sense. That's how it should be operated, I think.
Well, as much as there are elements of orthodoxy, even in Greek religion, elements of it, and even Judaism, though the term orthodoxy is less ontologically applied and more, as you've already said, applied to how much the person is contingent in their tradition, how much they're actually following and observing Torah. But using it from a more ontological or philosophical, elements of orthodoxy are present in even the most extremely orthopraxic traditions. But the emphasis is always on the orthopraxic in these sorts of traditions, and less on orthodoxy, where quite the opposite is true in Christianity, despite the fact that even in the most orthodox forms of Orthodox Christianity, there are specific ways that you have to use holy water. There's very specific ways that you need to use the wafer and the wine, the very specific ways that you need to use the incense and how you're moving it around, or all these sorts of things. So, you know, it's a gradation. There's levels of gradation. I do wonder what it would be like if you had a tradition that was literally half and half. It was like half orthopraxy and half orthodoxy. That'd be kind of strange.
I don't, you know, I want to say, what would be the closest thing you think to like a mix between orthodoxy and orthopraxy?
Orthopathy.
Orthopraxy, I'm sorry.
No, you got it right. A term that a friend of mine has been using lately, and it just came to mind, is actually a medical term. It's orthopathy. instead of praxis, praxis or doxia, it's pathos.
Pathos.
Yeah, yeah. And there's different ways that people kind of go about it, but what my friend was trying to say is that elements of all three are present in every religion in differing amounts.
Right.
See if I can get you a good element of like religious studies on it. Okay, that's what it is. Orthodoxy is right. Orthodoxy is right doctrine. Orthopraxy is right practice. And orthopathy is right affection or mindset. So matters of the heart. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or
That-
like
I was going to say that's like the big issue because a lot of people call me Orthodox, but in the Jewish sense, when they say Orthodox, they really mean Orthoprax. They don't mean Orthodox. We don't believe in an Orthodox. We believe in an Orthoprax, but it's very different. But it's frustrating in that sense once you actually understand the terms they're talking about. But colloquially, it's different. So
yeah. I would actually argue that things like traditional polytheism and early and traditional Judaism are orthopraxic, whereas a lot of Christianity and Islam are orthodox. And I would say that a lot of these very modern sorts of alternative spiritualities we've been discussing are orthopathic. They focus almost entirely on the emotional, affectional kind of spiritual experience, and are far less involved in any sorts of the structures that you would see from belief system, like dogmatic or doctrinal, and far less even on just structure of ritual and practices and virtues. So they focus almost entirely on just how they experience God emotionally. So there's very little actual theological or ontological structure in what they practice. They end up just basically being spiritual but not religious or just, eclectic. I would call those people spiritual eclectics.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm gonna head out for the night. It's
Okay.
really, really late. It's not super late, but late enough for me.
Super late, man. Super late.
Yeah.
yeah, it's getting up there. Yeah, fair enough. Have a good night. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. All right. See ya.
Thanks again. Take care.
Kevin,
What's up?
you're a nerd.
No. How could you tell?
You have a really nice smile.
Well, thank you. I don't bring it out often, but I do try to take it for walks. That was a bad joke. Bad joke. Well, it's just funny because a lot of the men in my family, particularly, we don't really smile a lot for pictures because it always ends up being like weird looking or whatever. But if it's genuine, it's actually really, really nice. I've been complimented on it. My brother's been complimented particularly. I mean, Dad has more of a smirk. No matter what he does, he always had kind of a smirk on it. So how'd it go over there? Minimal headache, hopefully?
Who, what, me?
Oh, yes, you.
I actually hung out with my roommate instead.
That's probably for the best.
Yeah. There was a couple people. I don't know. I don't really like what's her face. I don't know if she was joking, but she kind of damned me to hell last night.
Who?
And she's not a Trinitarian, and I just don't know her stance. I just don't like the energy I get from her. It's nothing personal or anything. Her
Well,
mind.
You were saying?
Hermione?
Hermione, is that her name or something?
That's how it's pronounced, how it looks. It's pronounced. I don't know how to pronounce the name very
Hermine?
well. Hermione?
Hermine?
Hermione.
Hermine. She calls herself Hermine or Hermine. She's African American. Yeah, it is.
I'm sure she's a wonderful person. I just don't like the energy.
She condemned you to hell?
I don't know if she was joking or not, but she said, "Oh, hello, Lindsay. How are you? I don't know if I told you, but you're going to hell." And then she laughed. So maybe it was a joke.
I think she was joking. I've talked to her a few times, and she's actually pretty open and progressive. So unless you become a fundamentalist overnight, I think you're fine. Best thing to kind of do when you hear something from somebody and you think that, maybe it meant something that, pretty negative, is to kind of take a step back and look at it. Step outside of your own kind of emotional context for a sec, just a little bit, and assess. And if you feel it, if it gets to you still, regardless, there's no shame in taking a break. Or just being quiet for a little bit. Let yourself collect. Go get a glass of water or whatever. Things affect people differently. Like my stepniece Katie, she was at we were all at this photo booth place taking pictures for my stepmother. Basically that whole side of the family. So it was easily like 10 or 15 people. And all the kids and everything or whatever. And she was taking care of her kid and everything. And I guess somebody in there said, oh, she's done. Because the kids were pooped. You take a million pictures of the little kids, the infants and stuff, they get really stressed. But she took it to mean she's done, get the fuck out. Because for whatever reason, stuff was going on. And she stormed out. She was pissed. Took her baby, whatever. We all ended up getting something to eat next door, walked down the way around the mall. And then she calls back and, she just had a little bit of a freak out. And it all had to do with her current boyfriend. They're having some relationship issues. So taking that to yourself, something that somebody says could have hit a nerve somewhere you don't know about. Something pissed you off that day, earlier the day, you don't even remember, bothered you. And they said something that kind of pinged that. It's a funny thing about emotions. It's like a soup. All sorts of things going on, and you don't know how it's going to taste until you throw the next thing in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had the same thing happen to me, so try your best not to take it personally and take a step back sometimes. That's all I'm saying. Especially in groups like this where religion is involved. Yeah.
I'm just a big sensitive person. I'm hypersensitive.
Well, that also means that you can be very caring and compassionate. There's a positive side to everything.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I have a lot of compassion.
That's good.
Oh, a few days ago I was listening to Interfaith 11, last week's Interfaith, and just to put this out there in case anybody's a chronic Interfaith listener, Frank, not Sufi Frank, but Frank with a K, stated that there was no law against rape in the Torah, but there's multiple laws against rape in the Torah. Yeah. So I just want to put that out there because it frustrated me when I was listening to it. Yeah, specifically asked why was there a commandment against rape, but there's like 6. But
well, you can't hardly blame people that are interpreting a translation of a translation of a translation of a translation of a translation. Yeah,
I agree. I think it was more so because I think this is a frustration you understand, but I was shoveling a lot of snow and I was listening to it at the same time for I was listening to it 2 hours, and he kept on making these strawman arguments about like, and I would agree. Like, there's a lot of concepts that he was right about the God of the Bible that he disagrees with, and I'll say it's perfectly fine to disagree with it. But like, one of the things was like, how could he not condemn rape? And I was like, well, he does that like half a dozen times, but in the Torah alone, as like actual laws. But okay.
There are two areas that come up in pretty much every Hellenic polytheist forum at any given point every few months. Two areas: magic and mysticism, gender and sexuality. This is how I feel about it. That was a little Freudian slip, because like people try to make everything like, oh, either they were totally pro all forms of magic and mysticism, and there was no social taboo. It was a wonderful utopia. Utopia meaning no place in Greek, so fuck y'all. And two, this idea that either they were rabidly patriarchal and hated all women and all gays, when the reality was it was incredibly nuanced, contingent upon different historical understandings of language, of culture, and dependent on each different city-state and different aspects of each city-state. And it was not simple at all.
I think it's true also. I think I've expressed this multiple times, at least to you, my frustration with Christianity, more so than other religions, because they take what my text and they like. And I don't like to use strong language in this group, but they pervert it in a lot of ways where I just want like kind of idea. And one of the ways that they do is how they view homosexuals. Like they think all homosexuals should die and like be stoned to death and they should be ostracized, and you can't be a faithful believer in being homosexual, where it's like completely antithetical to the Jewish view of homosexuals. And like, for instance, like if you look at American Protestantism, the idea of like there's no way that God would create somebody born homosexual, whereas like there's like even like and I'm talking about like classical Jewry like of 2,000 years ago. There's texts written where we believe that. We believe there's people who could be born gay or not, and it makes no difference. It's the idea of like ostracizing a person based off their own orientation, whether it be not sexually, but in any ways antithetical. And the fact that, and this is also why I'm bringing it, because Frank said like the God of the Bible is like evidently anti-homosexual. Is I would agree. There's definitely aspects of homosexuality, and I'm not sugarcoating that we don't agree with. But to say that somebody who's a homosexual is kind of like a deviant or an evil, disgusting person is not at least bit believed. The fact that Jews believe in 4 different sexualities is something that gets glossed over as well.
Yeah, because they don't speak the language. They don't even try to understand the lexicon, more or less, even speak it.
But I'm not trying to defend the idea of like my faith is like some like beautiful rainbow.
No.
I'm not trying to.
It's not black and white.
Yeah.
Just because being homosexual is fine, it doesn't mean that automatically that means that you can just be a whore. Sorry to use offensive language, but that seems like a lot of the debate.
That's what we believe. Say it's less about. That's exactly it. But I think the issue always comes back with with the idea of Christianity, that they're the only ones propagating this text and their interpretation of it. So you have like things like Uganda or Russia who are just like, you a man attractive, death, stone, kill him, behead them, kind of idea. And then,
there's actually a controversial aspect of early Christian theology that many Christians will just completely avoid. And it centers on the story of Saint Sergius and Bacchus, who were born into the early church. And it's been theorized by many people who are for same-sex being, kind of okay, that they were actually lovers. And there actually is some historicity to suggest that they were very, very close. And it kind of goes into Greek. There are concepts of Aristi being a sort of like close brotherly relationship, but that could have also been philia. But there actually was a rite that was known called adelphophoesis, which is brother making. It would have been a same-sex union. We don't know so much enough about it to say that it was practiced widespread, but there are isolated examples that seem to suggest certain people may have been their right of marriage, same sex, was honored. So there were different views in different parts of Christianity, and they will deny it vehemently.
That's interesting.
And that was 4th century. This wasn't like necessarily like a clear remnant of Gnosticism.
Right. No, I think that's true. Also, I have there's a girl I correspond with a lot on YouTube. Her name's Ellison Joy, and she's an openly lesbian Orthodox Christian. And I found that very interesting because all of my Christianity concepts of homosexuality came from Protestantism or even Catholicism, and I always found those disgusting just because it's so antithetical to my faith traditions of homosexuality, about like condemning them and all that stuff, and not embracing them into the faith. But apparently she found her place in Christianity through Orthodox, which completely accepted her. It's like you're gay, whatever. It's like it doesn't affect your faith. Just like somebody else struggles with envy or lust, or somebody might be a kleptomaniac. Like everybody has their own personal struggles. That's the whole point of faith. Like you persevere.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's different perspectives on that issue.
Right.
There are some people that believe it's just wrong. It's a sin. Some people believe that it should be actually extinguished, and that the people are actually deviants who are going around trying to spread that.
Like the anti-gay therapy or whatever.
Then there's a view that tends to have been held by quite a few different traditions for a while, that it's not necessarily wrong to be gay, but you're not to act upon it, that you can't actually have gay sex. And some of that is actually just cultural bias, things that in cultures that weren't even Christian or Jewish or anything like that would have just held because they had a distaste for the practice, because they weren't into it, so it has to be wrong. And they're the ones writing the laws. And then there's the view that is the ideal, that is, it's just a natural biological variance, but you still have to practice the religions as you're intended to. Be virtuous, don't be lascivious, all that sort of thing. But I think the far extreme of that, unfortunately, is that, okay, I can do whatever I want. I can have as many partners as I want, and that's the fear of the Christian right. That as soon as you let...
segregation of society and all that stuff.
Yeah, as soon as homosexuality is okay on every level, religiously, politically, and everything, that then it's just going to result in society, excuse my French, fucking in the street. That's their worry. They're worried that it's going to result in that.
Sure,
complete sexual immorality.
It's a downhill from there. Speaking of which, how does that apply in your own faith tradition? Because I know culturally, at least in Greece, homosexuality, it wasn't so much what we would view it here, but it was kind of like almost like a pastime kind of idea. It was like where you had men who were engaging in homosexual relationships, but they would still be in like completely heterosexual orientation. So like, how is that play religiously? Is that like a religious thing, or is it just cultural? It
was cultural.
Okay. Yeah. Actually,
there's more things in the actual studying the myths that point totally differently. Dionysus cross-dresses in some of the myths. Aphrodite is associated with several different domains that seem to suggest homosexuality. Many of the males that were associated with were homosexuals. There's a demigod. It's actually more of it's a demigod called Hermaphroditus, who is a child of Aphrodite and Hermes in one of the very obscure myths, who's actually fully androgynous. And Eros is also, who is actually a lesser deity associated with her, has a homosexual relationship with one of the other Eratis, other lesser deities associated with desire. So, but Eros was also associated with Psyche, who was female. So there seems to be a sort of bisexuality very common amongst the gods. It is a little... you don't want to jump to the conclusions that everything that's good for the gods is good for people, but...
Oh, of course, no, yeah, for sure.
you know, because for them it was more of a power thing that you could sleep, the gods could sleep with whomever they wanted. It was a symbol. It didn't
It was
directly.
it's symbology of that they are not you, you are not them kind of idea. Yeah.
But the fact that they included it suggests that it wasn't a universally held belief, and much of what we actually understand about Greece is that the more kind of puritanical or Victorian kinds of ideas about homosexuality was held in larger city centers, particularly Athens. But in other city-states, they were far more open about it. Thrace, Sparta, there's a few other ones that I was mentioning, but they escape me at the moment. But yeah, the views of gays, the views of women, the views of everything was far, far different. But it went back and forth, you know. Like Sparta would have been okay with, you know, homosexuals to an extent, and it respected the power of women, gave them land and everything. Hated Athens for not giving women any power, but also hated them for the whole man-boy love kind of thing that they had going on with tutoring. That in some instances, especially in aristocracy, may have actually resulted in some form of ephebophilia, but likely would have just been instruction and wouldn't have been sexual in nature. We can't conclusively prove what every single person would have done in that instance. That's another area of taboo, obviously. But their concept, their understanding of homosexuality was primitive. They didn't understand how any of that stuff worked. So a lot of it, they just associated it with dirtiness, and that anyone who was penetrated was of lesser status or lesser power, whether they were male or female.
But that's also like the classic view of not homosexuality, but a classic view of at least male on male relations in the ancient world is nothing to do with sexuality. But that's even true today. Like you think of prisons, same thing. It was like none of those men usually will identify as being homosexuals, but they'll still engage in acts of dominance or power, the power thing.
Yeah, it has little to do with any of those sorts of things. But depending on, like I said, more rural, and that's actually the funny thing. In our modern concept of progressive, the more progressive aspects of ancient Greek Roman society were actually out in the burbs. They would have been in the suburban rural areas of the city-state, and not in the core in the core public areas. In the public areas, you're very restricted because they didn't want anything that could suggest anything that people might be a little uncomfortable with. But if you were out in the sticks, nobody really cared. Nobody really cared what you did. So it's just it's funny, really.
Yeah.
But it just varies. It varies so much. A lot of it, though, honestly, the hating of women and gays, what it really comes down to is, I have money, I want to continue my lineage. I want my kids to keep having kids. I'm worried that one of my boys is going to be gay and not going to carry along my bloodline. I'm worried that my woman is going to, you know, my children or whatever, are going to try to seize power and be killed by an aggressive male. So I don't want my women to, you know, my women to have any of those sorts of problems. They're overprotective. So I think where a lot of that sort of comes down to, in my opinion.
Yeah, fair enough. That makes sense.
And I think that gay men and gay women should stop kidding themselves and thinking that it's just black or white. Either they hate you and want to stone you, tar and feather you because you're gay, or accept you on every level immediately and unconditionally. That's not how shit works. You have the most progressive parents in the freaking world, and you tell them that you're gay, they're going to have to take a while to adjust. It's not easy.
It's just outside of their context. They just...
Yeah, because you're expecting...
Exactly, yeah.
You're expecting lineages. You're expecting children. So
right.
We need to be honest about these subjects, you know. Things are not black and white. They just aren't.
I know, like, we use the umbrella term for Greece almost like a country, but I know it was, like, comprised of just basically city-states.
Yes.
And so, did the faith reflect those differences, or was it still pretty much the same basic faith, and maybe one state would have their patron god and another one, or would it be like almost like in their theology and practice they'd make view the same god but revere them differently?
Well,
I'm more so asking, like, how does the idea of a unified state with various provinces or basically cities come together in one faith? If there's or do they differentiate in some way?
okay. What we know about Greek religion mostly comes from what was preserved in Athens, especially the calendar. There are probably 4 or 5 somewhat fragmentary elements of the calendar. Fortunately, the calendar, it's really just different days for the months. The festivals are pretty much the same. There seem to be some rural differences out in the sticks, different places, different city-states, some slight variations here and there. Generally the same. Qualitatively, we associate that's all effectively Hellenismos. But it is likely that there were local variations of the religion that were different in different city-states. Small little variations to how they would have practiced. But, like you said, yes, many different city-states, even cities, had patrons, patron deities, patron spirits, whatever the case may be. There was considerable variation. And you have that with many of the Near Eastern religions. Actually, pretty much all of the main centers, the main cities in ancient Samaria were associated with a particular god, at least the more important ones. Babylon was associated with Marduk, usually. So that happens in a lot of different cultures. And we can sort of understand Greek religion through also looking at other cultures in the area, and sort of fill in a few of those gaps from our general understanding of archaeology and history and language. But pretty much it's the same, largely because in Greek religion it comes down more to orthopraxy than it does orthodoxy. But the really sad part is we don't know about the different myths. We only have a handful of different myths. It's likely that in ancient Greece there would have been local variations of the mythology and different relationships to the gods. But there seem to have been dominant ones. Hesiod seemed to it not only survived, but was one that kept being mentioned over and over again in other sources. So it was likely it was probably pretty dominant. But there were subsets. Orphic religion we don't know a whole lot about. That was like a sect, like a subsect of Greek religion that had like a totally different cosmology and different views that would have been considered very strange to the average Greek. And then obviously the philosophical schools and various esoteric orders later on. So was it all the same religion? Yeah, absolutely. Why? Because the culture and the language are the same. The terms they used in almost every discussion about religion were the same. Despite even completely wildly different philosophical traditions would all use the term logos. You know, they would all use similar concepts about that. They would all use the same words for love, eros, you know, or philia. They would use sophia, and they had a sort of substance to them. Each word had a rich cultural context that could be referred to and was commonly correlated back and forth to different schools and different ideas of thought. So yes, they're all the same religion.
Interesting. Thank you. Last thing on this topic, but did the Spartans differentiate in any way in their belief system, or is it basically the same thing? Just they had their own
differentiated largely on social structure.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, yeah.
Social structure and views of women, views of everything. I always tell this funny story, and I probably said it a few times here in Interfaith, but it's a good one. There was a conversation between two women in ancient Greece. It was preserved, and it was more anecdotally, so it wasn't like a direct translation or whatever. But one woman was from Athens, the other was from Sparta. The Spartan woman was a leader. The Athenian woman was aristocracy and didn't own any property of her own. And she looks at the Spartan woman, the Athenian woman does. And she asked the Spartan woman, why is it that your women can rule and own property? She said, because we're the only ones that make real men.
Right.
So
Exactly.
in Sparta, male or female, your arete, your excellence, your thumos, your heart, your strength, your power was valued over all else. And you had very rigorous instruction, very rigorous. Didn't matter who you were.
They also had like they almost had like a kind of proto-eugenics kind of concept of people, like
They were very strict.
the idea of like survival of the fittest and like.
Well, a lot of what we know about this sort of eugenics aspect was likely something that was practiced around the world. If you were born, born fucked up, you'd be thrown off a cliff. Sorry.
Oh, I didn't think like that. I didn't think like they had. I was just wrong. I was thinking it more so the idea of like they wanted like the fittest warriors versus.
You're speaking in a sort of like almost nationalistic kind of purity.
Yeah, I didn't mean it in like a literal eugenics sense, more of like a social sense.
Yes, in the social sense, they were very much about that, and they would test you. If you couldn't perform, if you didn't have the strength, the stamina, the intelligence to be able to fight, to be able to protect yourself, to be able to survive, to be able to understand, to build, and all that, you would be relegated to lesser functions, and your political strength in the world would be affected. You would be in a different class. Let me actually show you a Wikipedia. One of the Hellenic group that I told you about, that's out in LA.
Yeah.
Eric, we butt heads on politics. He's very socialistic. I'm much more conservative. But he uses the Spartan political model.
Really, that's interesting.
Yeah, he wants to.
It's got to be a little bit too archaic for people.
Well, you know, what are you gonna do?
Yeah. Okay. Never mind.
Yeah, what are you gonna do, right? Says the Jew to the Hellenist.
Exactly.
Too fucking archaic. What are you doing?
Yeah. Exactly. Right.
Bullshit. Here is a image file. It's a flowchart that describes the Spartan constitution, the way it's structured. There's different oversight committees. There's different constructions and different things. The large one is kind of at the bottom. The Spartans, or the Spartiatatis, are full citizens of the polis, and there's different aspects of that, and it breaks down even further. The Periokoi are the lacedaemons of surrounding territories. They didn't have full citizens' rights. They were kind of exterior slightly. And the Helots were conquered subjects, serfs, basically foreigners in a lot of cases. Like complete foreigners. They were either it's kind of weird, but the way that my friend was trying to do it is he was trying to use the tripartite structure and the kind of structure of kingship and all that as a means to run the group. So participating members of the Thiassos would and who paid into it would be full members. Then there would be kind of like below that there would be people who just kind of observe and come every so often but are active, and then at the outside would be basically non-members. So, but they were very much a sort of meritocratic society. You were valued on your merits over many other of the city-states, but they all effectively use democracy. Every Greek city-state was contingent upon some level of democracy. Voting was done. But the relationship of Sparta to the rest of Greece was very interesting because they were kind of a coastal culture, and they were kind of at the fringe of everything going on in Greece. So anybody who wanted to attack them, they had to go through Sparta. They were so badass that Alexander didn't want to take over Sparta. He was like, fuck it. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
Just not worth it. So, and they were used in so many different wars. I mean, they were sort of like the mercenaries of Greece. They were just complete badasses, complete fucking badasses.
They ate that like disgusting porridge stuff.
Blood soup.
Blood soup, right? Yeah.
They did that to test their warriors,
So, like,
especially young warriors.
Yeah.
If you could eat it without puking all the way through, you know, you could handle anything they could throw at you. And having testing of your metal doesn't make you inherently patriarchal. It makes you a man. It makes you strong. It makes you a warrior. And for that matter, I think women should be able to have a little bit of some testing of one another without it becoming a catty mess. But
right, yeah.
What do I know? I'm just a horrible patriarch, right? Because I have money and land, and I'm straight apparently.
And you're white. That's the.
Oh, I'm white.
Zero. Zero.
Yeah. So stupid. The relationship between male and female is something that's it's interesting because we so commonly associate. Oh yeah, that's a really good quote, Reuven. There's a story that says when Philip invaded Greece and Thebes and Athens had submitted to Macedonian rule, he sent a message to Sparta to the effect of, "You are advised to submit immediately, for if I win this war, I will destroy your people and all you have." The Spartan reply was, "If." Every time I think of Sparta, I just think of a Greek that looks like fucking Conan the Barbarian, like with a giant fucking helmet. If. Fucking badasses. Anyway, the relationship between male and female is it's something that has existed for a long time, and we seem to want to blame Abrahamic religions for that. It's like when people hear, "Oh, I'm not a Christian," it's like they think that I'm doing so just because of, like, you know, gay rights or women or some kind of social aspect. Mm-hmm. What I disagree with Christianity is ontological and ideological, which I discussed before, the original sin, the idea of heaven and hell, all these very particular viewpoints that are like standard that have to be adhered to in Christianity is the problem. These social views, they were evolving, and they were there. In many cultures, they weren't even Christian. We forget that we come from a hunter-gatherer culture earlier on. You know, that's how things were. The men hunt, the women gather, and do all the things domestic, and men do all the things outside of that, doing a lot of the building and the structure. And it's not necessarily because the woman's role is a lesser role, but because men are physically stronger on average than women, right, and are well tasked to do that. Because women tend to have much smaller motor skills, they have much better attention to detail, they have much better of an emotional intelligence than men do, and are far better at the kinds of child rearing that would be necessary for that. Hence why many children were in the company of several women taking care of them at any given point. There's sexual dimorphism. It's biology. It's not religion. So when people make it this whole black and white, where either women are relegated to this role and men are relegated to this role, or there's complete and utter freedom of everything, you can do whatever you want. I mean, that's just kind of silly. We can't deny our biological roles. They're there to a certain extent, and they've been enculturated. And some of that is for good reason. It's not necessarily negative. But there's obvious exceptions in different cultures. There were women warriors. And some of the earliest people who were doing sewing were men. Things have reversed. They've completely reversed in some respects, Like, to use sewing as an example, the earliest people who were stitching things, they were stitching hides. They were using it to survive. And that switched over when cloth became more of a thing because it required more detail. So, Doug, I didn't say that. That's horrible. Women should be allowed to vote. We just shouldn't care. No, I'm kidding. Okay.
Or I'm also thinking the idea of like we think of like men as being the protectorate, but like the base instinct of women is so much stronger to protect their children is a lot stronger than men. Even in the animal kingdom, it's that idea of just like fervent kind of this is mine and I'm going to protect it more than anything. It's so much stronger in the female species by and large for any group of animal than just humans. So that's but we just view it as like men are the warrior, they're the protector, women are just docile. Whereas a mother's 10 times out of 10 more likely to put her life on the line than a man is for the sake of her child.
The problem is not that the roles exist, not that there are gendered qualities to particular sorts of aspects of social dynamics, but rather that we have relegated those gendered qualities to dualities. That a woman's role domestically or as a woman
wrote them into law.
Passive. Yeah, that it is entirely passive when it's not. There are many things that a woman would have had to have done in centuries past, thousands of years ago, that would have put her life on the line almost as often. Especially when you're talking about gathering. They would have been in some of the same kinds of peril that men would have been going out to hunt because there were animals everywhere. That's just one thing. Not to mention keeping your kids safe from all sorts of different dangers, having to deal with sickness and illness in your village and all sorts of different things. So, yeah, and then creating undue strain on men by making it too much of an active role when there are many different roles that men can fulfill in society which are actually passive but still very masculine. Perfect example is any kind of building. If you're not actually going out running your ass off trying to hunt something or run away from something, I wouldn't say it's necessarily as active as creating something on the ground, sitting down, piecing something together. That's actually very passive, requires a lot of focus of attention. It may not even require all that much physical brute strength, but it definitely requires the kinds of spatial reasoning that seem to be very core to our understanding of what it is to be male. So I think it's better to say that men and women are different, but our fields of expertise overlap.
Right. There's it's not an expression. It's technically a law in Judaism, but it's utilized nowadays since it's not really so much realistic. But it's utilized more of a parable. But it's a technical law. It's the idea of like when war breaks out, the women will be there in their wedding dresses, in the sense that even on a woman's wedding day, if there's a war against our people, she'll be out there in like veil in her wedding dress with like a sword or a gun in her hand defending her people kind of idea. But but nowadays it's utilized as like the opposite of the idea of like a woman in her wedding dress with a sword kind of idea. That's the ideal woman. There's no concept. There's the concept of being fragile, also being independent or dominant. It's the idea of like the concept of a gender isn't about being one's passive and one's dominant, but it's how that passiveness and how that dominance is reflected in the individual.
Yes.
And I think that's the best way of looking at it. Not the idea of like there isn't like a lot of like in the modern day and age, which I'm very much against, that there isn't a concept of gender inequality, not inequality. There isn't a concept of gender differences, and that all genders are equal in the same way. But the idea that genders are different, but they're different in their own unique ways that aren't the opposite or weaker than the other. They're just
apples and oranges.
Yeah.
I've said that for years. But I've said that about a lot of things. I've said that about cultures and societies. That we try to enforce this very artificial notion of equality when really we should be focusing more on respecting diversity, because there is always going to be things with two or more groups of people that are just different. They're irreconcilably different on some essential level, and that's okay. You know, that can be respected in a good and just society. Those differences can be respected, honestly. So, and I think the same is with males, with male and female, and with sexuality and everything. So, I mean, these are obviously some of the reasons why there's conflict for people who are practicing traditional or indigenous faiths that, I mean, they're not outwardly going out and being oppressive like some of the, like the medieval church was, but there are ideas that are older. So it seems like we have to like justify some of these concepts when a lot of times they were just the way people understood things culturally because of the time they lived in. They just didn't have the resources we have now.
So in Judaism we have, I think it's my last question, or my last discussion, then I'll leave. But in Judaism we have 4 different, I guess genders, we would call them.
Mm-hmm.
We have male, female. We have a tum, which is someone who has who is both who is both male and female. We have an androgynisa, which is they're neither kind of idea. So was there like how would that like apply in Hellenistic tradition? Or does I'm mainly asking this not like the idea of like the differentiation between the differences, but more so the idea in your faith tradition. Is there a concept of differentiation between the sexes, and if so, is there like the idea of like there's a gray area?
There is a gray area.
Gender role, I guess, is for the feminist term, gender roles. But.
Well, there was a male and female, and they were very much epitomized in a lot of society. There was somewhat of a patriarchal aspect to the sort of arete excellence that was, emphasized in Greek society was often associated with masculinity. So males were definitely favored in some respects in much of Greek society, though not always. As for a third gender, I mean, we get the word androgyny from androgynous, from the Greek androgynos, meaning it means man-woman.
Yeah.
Androgyne, like gynecologist, basically referring to the vagina. They were very, very. A lot of the words that we use in Greek are very descriptive. In that, very specific. And like I said, there are certain myths that suggest that they would have had some element of androgyny associated, but generally, and it seems to have really kind of carried over to our modern aspect, androgyny was usually associated with youth. It actually was sort of exemplified in their art. A lot of times when a statue is made of a younger deity or a younger person or a relief was made of a particular scene, if there's a youthful element to them, they would have always had no beard. That was the thing. They would have always been slightly more effeminate.
Would that be why it's more socially acceptable for an older man to be with a younger boy than 2 older men to be together?
Yes.
Okay.
And when you're saying younger men, you're saying like 16, 17.
Yeah.
When people are talking about ephebes, they're talking about teenagers.
Okay.
They're like older teenagers. And at that time, a man could be 20-something and marrying a 14-year-old girl. Come on. That's what happened.
Yeah, for sure.
So our cultural context is different. And when you only live to 35, are you really going to give somebody shit for being 20 and marrying a 15-year-old? Really?
I was just more sort of curious. Like you see,
Not you. I'm saying in general, people.
no, I'm just kind of curious because I asked this before about I guess when I was talking about homosexuality, but I was more curious the idea of because I saw it as more like it was really much a senior man, not like a senior in our context, but an older man with a younger boy. But I didn't really get to come across that like it's not because he was a homosexual, because otherwise it would have been like you'd have two older men of the same age together. But it seemed to be more like it was younger and older. But it makes more sense if a younger person was kind of seen not so much in a particular context in the same way as if he was to be a few years older.
The associations were generally that the younger that you were, the more ambiguous you were.
Right.
You were less associated, so the gray area
Right.
was passable for them. So if you were youth or looked young, because there was even terms for that, it was more common for it to be okay. It kind of makes sense. We're cool. All right. This is your concubine. Okay.
Right. And that relates back to the whole concept of having a beard or not in art.
Yes, it totally relates back to it because
that makes more sense.
Just in the general sense of a male, it was like, all right, you're old enough, beard, cool.
Right.
But you have to have the wisdom to back it up. A sign of social shaming in Greece was cutting off a part of your beard. Somebody else cutting off a part of your beard. Generally, you would have a full beard, or you would have a chin beard, or not chin, a curtain. A lot of times they would shave off their mustache. But,
okay, yeah.
It was probably goatees. Mustaches, more modern Greek and like Victorian, medieval, Renaissance. Back in the day, the ancient Greeks would have thought mustaches were weird. They thought that when they saw the Celts, the strangers, Keltoi, that's where the word comes from, they would have seen the mustaches of what the fuck are these people doing? Where's their beard? That would have been very, very weird for them. But it may have been different. Who knows? There might have been exceptions to the rule. But generally, though, more facial hair, the better.
Like my friend says, there's two types of people in the world that don't have beards: women and children, and I'm neither.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, if you're not going to grow out a full beard, grow out a decent goatee, grow out a good mustache, have some kind of facial hair on your body. If you're in your 30s,
yeah.
If you can grow it, grow it.
Yeah.
You should. It's funny though, the relationship of masculinity though. I've told this story a few times. It's not a story, it's a sort of a historical aspect. Athens and Sparta were totally different on the aspect of hair and facial hair, on one respect. It's very, very weird. In Athens, if you were a young boy, okay, you would grow your hair out. They wouldn't cut your hair. You were young and free. That was the whole thing. It's very much like our sort of concept in the modern day. Boys 5 or 6 or 7 years old, okay, you're going to get a haircut now, and then they cry and scream, and you give them bubble gum afterwards because they're freaked out that this weird machine is going on and their hair is being cut. With Athens, you got to basically to the point of being an ephebe, a youth, getting to basically a part of adolescence. There's different terms, but basically there was a cutting of the hair ritual, and that you would be sort of inducted into male society. You would go to effectively the barber shops. You would be able to talk with men about their issues and male issues, talk about politics and what was going on and working and all these sorts of things. They would kind of graduate you to maleness. And there was also coming of rights initiations and all sorts of other things, much of which we don't know a whole lot about, but the haircutting ritual we do know. Sparta was the total reverse. You were a young boy, and you were studying and getting stronger and all that sort of thing. Your hair was cut. None of that. You have your hair totally freaking short. And then as soon as you get to a point that your masculinity was proved, when you were a teenager, basically, you can grow your hair out. And it would be expected that you would grow out your hair, you would grow out your beard, you would be a man. So it's interesting the differences between just those two cultures.
Yeah, thanks for that. That clears up a few things I was curious about this week.
Yeah. That view, though, one thing, a point of clarification. In Athens, the sort of general aspect of it was that you kept your hair fairly short and your beard would grow long. So this kind of thing, about this length and maybe a little longer, there were some variances depending on different centuries, but generally you would keep your hair semi-short to moderately long. Not really to shoulder length or anywhere close to that. It would generally be associated with being younger. But the beard you could grow out. And a lot of times the beard would actually be curled. You see, like Epicurus had like a very kind of wavy beard. A lot of the philosophers,
like locks, almost in a way.
Yeah, they would have locks. It would actually be oiled and all kinds of things. But even if you didn't do the curl thing or the waves, you would or crimp it or whatever the case is, you would also always comb it with different oils and perfumes and whatever. That was just a thing that men would have done. But yeah, you would generally keep your hair pretty short to moderately short because it was out of the way. In Athens, you didn't want to have your hair in the way. But in Sparta, it was a sign of virility. So you wanted to keep your hair. Thing two, in Greece, and pretty much all of Greece, when you go bald, it's a sign of wisdom. It was actually admired. They had affection for the idea. When you got older and your growing bald was a sign that you had the wisdom and years to go with it. And you have to understand too that a 60-year-old man was ancient in much of Greece. So if you could live that long, that your head was totally bald, and that was a good thing. That means that you were doing good for yourself. So it's just funny looking at these small little kind of rituals and cultural contexts that have just, some of them have continued and other ones have completely gone the opposite way.
Well, it's the same thing for me. Like, we don't have a concept of baldness, but we have a concept of white hair. White hair is like prestigious and like venerated, and you stand up for the person with white hair and all this stuff. But like nowadays, it's like how many people dye their hair to remove all the grays and the whites and stuff. Whereas it's supposed to be the complete opposite in my tradition.
The concept of really, really short hair, like sheared down to almost nothing, is wrong. Right? The idea of incredibly short hair and no beard
and all that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There was returns though. A lot of the sort of pro-republic Romans wanted return to that. So they would grow out their beards, and they would actually grow their hair out slightly longer. Would keep it fairly trimmed. That was the common practice, was this sort of medium short, sometimes a bit longer, like I said. But super short was a Roman thing, and it was very much tied into the imperialism of their culture. They were very, very pro-military, very much orderly, like to the nth degree, authority over excellence and prestige. And that's why a lot of the military has adopted that, because they really picked up a lot of Roman thought. The idea of like a lot of our modern military takes its ideas from Rome. In particular, a lot of the Stoic philosophy. A completely, rigidly almost, control of your emotion, control of your body, and being aware of your surroundings and also of your mind. Complete and utter refinement. I mean, that's a true soldier. So Stoicism was particularly popular among both the ruling class and among soldiers and workers, people who worked hard for a living, because they needed it. They needed Stoic philosophy to help. There's actually some books on it too. There's a book that came out recently. It's cross-cultural. You don't have to be practicing Greek religion or anything. There are actually a lot of Stoics I know are deists or regular old theists or even atheists. Stoicism as a philosophy can very, very, very easily be applied as a philosophy for life. I'm not a Stoic. I'm a hedonist, but I appreciate Stoicism. Speaking of your tradition being completely misinterpreted, hedonism in Greece, hedonismos, means something totally different than it means now.
Oh yeah, I was going to say there must be a little bit different. No.
Yeah, hedone is pleasure, and a hedonist would be about. I don't take some of the other aspects of hedonism, but the core concept is that self-pleasure is the ultimate sort of the thing that all things are oriented to. The good things that you do for yourself, the good things you do for others, that ultimately your sign that what you're doing is right, the sign that what you're doing is effective, is that it makes you pleasure. It gives you pleasure. Real, consistent, continuous pleasure. Just being egotistical is not hedonistic. Not at all. It's quite the opposite, in fact. You're actually harming yourself in the process. That's why the Epicureans were about, their concept of hedone was the prevention of pain. They were about avoidance of pain as opposed to the cultivation of pleasure. They had sort of two different perspectives on the same aspect. And I've taken to a lot of that philosophy, and I've correlated it to a lot of my more esoteric spiritual aspects as one of my primary deities that I spend a lot of time with of late, particularly, is Dionysus. And the aspect of his cult that was very important was a return to the natural state of man, to our indigenous state, to our ordinary state, and appreciating nature for what it is, appreciating the nature of man, being able to understand your desires better without reservation or compulsion. So living naturally in that sense. There's something to me that is very very appealing. But I mean, there's different aspects of faith. The thing is with philosophy is there's different things that you can kind of incorporate. I seriously doubt that there would have been people who were they only attended one philosophical school, unless they were leading the school. I'm sure that people probably took thoughts from different philosophical schools as being relevant to their practice, much in the way that you as a Jewish person may look to different rabbi for different interpretations and codes of living based on Scripture. At least in the aspect of being able to understand different perspectives and coming to your own conclusion. Yeah.
Makes sense, yeah.
So, I mean, I'm sure there were probably people who were hardcore. Hardcore hedonists, hardcore Stoics, or whatever.
There's always extremists.
Yeah, I don't take it to it extremely, and I think extremism and hedonism is actually where you get egotism. People that think they think so much of pleasure that they miss out on the fact that it's nuanced. Yes, you can relegate that ultimately everything comes back to personal pleasure, but if all you focus on is just the immediate personal pleasure, it's folly. So I think the aspect of hedonism that makes the most sense for me is that what makes it wonderful is that life gives us so many things that give us pleasure, and some of the greatest things that give us pleasure is doing good. One of the most immediate aspects of pleasure is doing that act of kindness for another person. It's one of the most instantaneous and long, deep levels of pleasure that a person can obtain.
Knowing you did the right thing.
Hmm?
I'm saying knowing you did the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a gift. Pleasure is a gift. And that's how I sort of see it. But I think that it's a finer thing, pleasure. It needs to be cultivated. It's like when people say, yeah, I'm all about pleasure too. You're drinking completely crap wine or like a dollar store fucking liquor or something. Maybe not dollar store, but really, really cheap, plastic bottle vodka. And you're saying that you're about pleasure. No, pleasure is saving your money and getting a 15-year-old bottle of scotch, sitting there with a nice cigar, out there on the patio, in the night air. Yeah. That is pleasure. Or eating that home-cooked meal that you made for an hour with somebody you care about and enjoying their company under candlelight. That is pleasure.
Right.
And so at the end of the day, saying that I'm a hedonist is kind of an interesting conversation starter because people are like, what? So you're like hedonism bot from Futurama, you're just going to drizzle a freaking maple syrup all over your body and go, oh, it's really decadent. Like, no, that's not how hedonism works. So by actually using its proper term, it gets, okay, so what does it actually mean? Well, here's what it means. It encourages people to look into language, what things are actually meant to mean, to study a little. So I think it's valuable. I actually, what was I going to say? Oh, what was that, Doug? The King's Card. We're at the Tower of Joy. Yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm trying to develop more of a taste in whiskey. It's been something that's been difficult for me. Wine, too, even though I was raised with a ton of it, because I get a little heartburn, and I have to really find out the right kind of wine. It's funny, I'm a devotee of Dionysus, and wine is difficult for me. I do like alcohols, but I have to really be in the mood for it, so it's good. What was I going to say? I was going to say that I really think that with Christians, one of the things that's probably going to help them in the convening centuries is actually having properly translated versions of their Bible, where the Old Testament that they're supposed to use is actually a direct English translation of Hebrew, and that the New Testament that they're using is a direct translation of the Koine Greek with proper annotations. You know what I'm saying? Because, I mean, and having some communication with Jewish people. Like, what did it mean for you? It'll be difficult, though, because they don't have... Christians don't use the Tanakh, and they don't use... what's the other one? I'm spacing out here.
Torah?
The Talmud. There we go.
Oh, the Talmud. Sorry, yeah.
They only have the written, translated version of the Torah, but they don't have any of the other sort of commentaries of the Torah, the things that are contingent to Jewish tradition that make sense of written Torah. Yeah. So, I
think, if anything, my biggest issue when it comes to Christianity is their literalist view of the text in the Scripture, which is like borderline heretical for Jews if you like to take things at face value in the text. But that's how they propagate it, and that's why we're in so many issues as we are, I think, in the Western world for sure, because of this perverted literalist view. Which also means that there's no chance for evolution in the viewing of the text. There's no chance of progression. It's just like sola scriptura, black and white. This is how it is. This is how it is. What do you use for text? Not saying as a scripture, but more so for like liturgical use. Is there like a classical like hymn structure, or is it like specific per deity or something?
It's deity specific.
Right. Okay.
The two ones that we use are the Homeric hymns and the Orphic hymns, which I can link you to if you're interested. There's lists of different hymns for different deities. Some of them, like they were written and we don't really know all of their sorts of meaning. And the kind of way they're written is a little unusual sometimes, the things they mention. So they may be, sometimes we modify them, but a lot of times in public ritual, hymns were sung. Many of us don't speak Greek or know the actual way they were sung. We do have some reconstructions of some of the hymns in the actual music notation that they were put in, but even that, we're not entirely sure. So most of us do is we recite English translations of the hymns.
That's interesting. I would have assumed you would have some kind of note, like cantillation marks or something, but
No, a
like,
lot of them wasn't preserved.
oh, very interesting.
So, like, an example, I actually have a book where I write all my hymns down. It's a lined book. So, as all the way filled, I just filled with my primary hymns. Some of them are very, very devotional. Some of them are much more kind of primal. So, like, perfect example would be, I think one you probably appreciate, Homeric hymn number 23, to the son of Kronos. It's one of the primary hymns to Zeus. We have a few, like 3 or 4. And it goes, I will sing of Zeus, chiefest amongst the gods and greatest, all-seeing, the Lord of all, the fulfiller who whispers words of wisdom to Themis, goddess of justice, as she sits leaning towards him. Be gracious, all-seeing son of Kronos, most excellent and great. It's sort of a hymn to the king of the gods. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But the Orphic hymns are a little bit more mystical. They actually come from Orphic tradition, which we don't know a whole heck of a lot about. So just to give you a short difference, I'll show you one of the ones I actually put in for Zeus, which is Orphic hymn number 19 to Zeus of lightning, sort of the lightning striker. I call the mighty, holy, splendid light, aerial, dreadful sounding, fiery bright, flaming aerial light with angry voice, lightning through lucid clouds with horrid noise, untamed to whom resentments dire belong, pure holy power, all parent, great and strong. Come and benevolent these rites attend, and grant my days a peaceful, blessed end. So it speaks to a much more poetic, and the guy who translated it many, many years ago used a more poetic verse. He correlated it, made a lot of them rhyme more often than not, and they're very beautiful in English, so it works out really well. So, but I have heard them. I've heard many of them translated into Greek. So I mean, you don't have to. I mean, hymns are, like I said, they're usually sung when you can, but you don't have to. And as a modern adaptation of an ancient religion, I think it's pretty good. Many of the hymns I have to the gods, though, are long, really, really long. Like one of them takes up a whole page. Another one takes up 2 pages. The hymn to Aphrodite takes up 2 pages. Men really, really liked Aphrodite. They would just sing to her. Oh my God. So, yeah, it's good stuff.
Fair enough.
So, thank you for letting me share that with you.
Yeah. Probably in a week, maybe even a week today, I'll post a video on Interfaith of my my Hanukkah, like my candelabra outside, and I'll dub it with a liturgical hymn over top, and I'll translate it.
Very nice.
We should start doing that, sharing our personal kind of devotions or whatever.
Well, that's a part of the reason why I shared the altar space. To encourage people to feel welcome, and that we're not just people sitting behind a computer screen, or, as I like to use in occultism, armchair occultists or armchair spiritual people. We're not just sitting in a chair barking at other people what we believe and not doing anything. We're actually actively practicing.
Yeah.
So, so
we have not just rhetoric.
Last time I didn't do as much as I would have liked for Numenia. I only prayed. I didn't do a full ritual. So this Numenia, I'm definitely gonna make an offering. It's largely because it fell around the time I was moving, so I was just completely just all over the place. I had no time for anything. But now I think I can really make up for it. And it's good, too, because things have settled. And in the domestic cult of Greece, it was very important that the place is pure, and that you're honorable, and that you have taken out external distractions. You're not putting in all of your pitiful biases upon something that's supposed to be sacred and silent. I mean, sacred silence was very important to the Greeks. Silence in thought, silence in activity, but also that you would stand proud in front of your gods, that you would have reason to worship and reason to make sacrifice. So.
Oh, that's interesting. I like that.
Yeah, definitely. That's actually what separates Greek tradition from a lot of Near Eastern traditions. In Greek tradition, a lot of times you would stand up in front of your altar with your arms out extended. Some people say it's more like this, but it's really just your hands up and you're devotional. This is very European generally. Whereas with the Near Eastern, typically you were like this. Your head would be down, and you would say, something to the effect of shalamu, something like, especially in Canaanite, there would be, or a Babylonian, they would use the same kind of word.
Yeah, like in my tradition, when we pray, our eyes are gazed down and hands over the heart, kind of like this, kind of like.
It was very reverent.
Exact same kind of, the traditions kind of like the same, yeah.
Very similar. There's some differences, but very similar. So a lot of times you would clasp your hands and bow your head.
Yeah. Like
that. I mean, that was a very Near Eastern kind of idea. They were much more reverent and very, very quiet, and you approach the divine from a very quiet and very that you're speaking to somebody of great authority. You're speaking to somebody who you need to be careful around. That you not necessarily walking on eggshells, but be careful. Be mindful of everything you do. That was very, very particular to Near Eastern cultures, that you needed to be very mindful. The Greeks, it was more of an emotional, but also very rational kind of experience. Very regimented and very ordered.
You weren't like Pentecostals.
Yeah. In a certain sense, there was a lot of those sorts of traditions are kind of intermingled. When you go to a Catholic church and you see people putting holy water on their head, you see the priest going by swinging the incense, you hear the music, you see people standing like pillars when they raise from there. A lot of that is informed from Greek religion. There's a lot of pageantry to Greek religion. Even the most quiet domestic cult was very, very much about that level of romance, if that makes sense. There was a very much of an affection to their religious rituals.
The thing you said about silence reminded me of two quotes from my tradition.
Yeah.
One is silence is a safeguard to wisdom, and the other is one of the sages said, "I've found nothing better through my entirety walk of life than silence." Or nothing better for men in my entirety walk of life than silence.
Absolutely.
Basically, otherwise, how else would you be seen as a jackass? kind of idea. Basically, what it's saying.
There's actually a phrase. I've adopted certain Greek phrases into much of my ritual I've memorized. Or it's actually just a statement that you would do after you purify the altar and yourself and light the candles and the incense and begin. You would often say sacred silence or may I speak no evil. Euphemity. It was a declaration that past this point, nothing that I say or do is evil. It is of ill intent, that is disingenuous. But all that what I do is authentic. It was very, very important to the Greeks. So that was why silence was so important to them. Because if you can't speak well enough to get your point across correctly and genuinely, then you should not speak. It's where a lot of our modern concepts of you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. It's where that comes from. It's very much from that earlier traditions.
Yeah, I like that.
It's been very very rewarding for me. Um, and I'd like to build from here. You know, it's been a long journey. I would like to do more, but I find that the best thing to do, and it's kind of where my guidance where my wisdom, the wisdom I've received has guided me, is to take everything gradually. That where your path is meant to go is as it should. Keep doing what you're doing consistently, and it will continue to grow.
Yeah.
Stay true to the connection that you have, and they will guide you. You know?
Don't rush things. Don't force things is a better way of saying it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Consistency is key.
Definitely. So it'll be good.
Doug, I haven't heard anything from you.
Yeah, you've been real quiet there.
I'm listening to you guys and music at the same time.
Ooh. You must only listen to us.
I think I'm gonna. Oh, 1 second. It is. Yeah, it's 2 o'clock right now for me, so I'm
Gotcha.
gonna head to bed.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for coming again.
Yeah, I'll speak to you this week. Anything, I'll see you next week.
Absolutely. Take
Be
care.
well. Bye bye.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna head out too. I'm really tired. I worked a long day today. And I meant to tell you too, Ruben, tomorrow I'll probably be late to Bible Geek because of work again. But I'll be there. Anyway, good talking to you guys, or listening to you.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah. And I probably won't run into you again until next Interfaith. Unless you pop in on one